Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem. Hi, this is Stephen Bonner. This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio. It's the 25th of April, which is Anzac Day here in Australia. Of course, like I mentioned, a big day here for all the military, all the people who served in the army. But it's great to join you guys here with another episode of Submission Radio. Now, Casper, as I kick this off, just want to bring attention to my t-shirt today. I feel like it's kind of timely because of the lineup that we have. The t-shirt says, I came for the revolution, but I stayed for the hot dogs. And my friends, do we have a revolution for you today and some hot dogs as well? We have a great collection of guests, some first-timers on the show, and some fan questions as well. So I don't know where the hot dogs fit in, Casper. I think it's sort of near the end around the fan questions. Wherever it does, it seems like a delicious, mind-blowing episode of Submission Radio this week.
Yeah, I feel like hot dogs, if it's a good one, it's got some mustard, some spicy mustard, and as always, the guests are sexy and they're spicy on Submission Radio.
Sauerkraut, a bit of sauerkraut.
Oh, getting a bit exotic there, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you know, sometimes people forget about the sauerkraut. And, this wasn't my mission to remind people to talk about sauerkraut in Submission Radio, episode 157, but damn it! If I have to do it, I will. Sauerkraut's delicious.
When you got to bring up sauerkraut, you got to do it. So people who will not be talking about sauerkraut, that's for sure. Dan Hooker obviously got a really big win this past weekend over Jim Miller. Absolutely destroyed him with another tasty niece who's going to be on the program to talk about what's next for him and relive that glory moment. You mentioned debuts, some spicy debuts. James Vick, a man who he's trying to get these big fights at lightweight, and it's just not working out. And obviously, lightweight division is hotter than it's ever been. Kevin Lee getting the win over this past weekend. So there's a lot to talk to James Vick about, and obviously, what is next for him exactly. Speaking of lightweights, Al Iaquinta finally coming back to the program. It's been a while since we spoke to Al. We want to touch in and I guess check on the man. You know, a couple of weeks after UFC 223, some more things have happened since then. And find out what's going on with him. Hopefully those eyes have healed. We saw him on the MMA Hour, and Jesus Christ, those eyes look bad. So we're going to have him on video, so it'll be very curious to see what Al looks like these days. And of course, Brett Okamoto, you all know him from his great work from ESPN, jumping on for the discussion segment. A lot of things we want to get Brett's thoughts on. And then afterwards, we're going to be rounding it off with some fan questions. You guys tweeted us with some questions, and we're going to be answering them, aren't we, Dennis?
Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting. I was hoping for some relationship advice or something spicy. How to do the switch if you're dating a chick and she's got a housemate that you like more. But I guess we'll have to save that for next time. Just a quick reminder to you guys that we'll do fan questions next week. It won't be a weekly occurrence, but I think we'll do it next week as well because we didn't really announce it properly on last week's show, and it's like a last-minute thing that we did on Twitter. So if you do have a fan question for us, I guess just send it to us in the DMs over on Twitter or Facebook message. Or we'll throw up the tweet a couple of days before the episode, and you guys can do it then. You'll have plenty of opportunities to ask us your questions. We want to stress, though, like MMA is fine. We're happy to talk MMA, but we kind of want to talk about anything. It could be life-related, relationships, movies, you know, anything that you want to sort of talk about, debates. It could be a silly question. Throw it into us, and we'll sort of digest it and give you our most uneducated perspective that we can. So send it through
emphasis on uneducated.
Emphasis on uneducated. It's just a little bit of fun. We just want to communicate with you guys a bit more and have a bit of fun talking to you guys. And of course, before we jump over as well, just a quick reminder, that's Submission AUS at Submission AUS on Twitter, and of course facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS, which is where you can check out some fun videos. You can like some videos, you can send us messages. A lot of fun there, Cass.
Yeah, you mentioned videos. I can't let the cat out of the bag yet, but we're going to have some really, really fun content coming to the YouTube channel. Oh, who am I kidding? It's going to be the technique of the week. I just can't help myself. It's been a long time since we've had new techniques of the week, but we are in the process at the moment of shooting some. We've got some great people editing for us, and then they will be on the channel shortly. Can't say exactly when, but we're probably a matter of weeks away, and we've got some really, really fun people lined up. So just wanted to throw that out there, a bit of a cheeky teaser, kind of like the new Venom trailer. You know, we're teasing these things, not coming out for a while, but at least you know that it's in the pipeline. So there you go. Just another reason to subscribe to the YouTube channel, as if there wasn't enough reasons. I mean, we're on video now. You get to see our sexy or disgusting faces, depending on which side of the fence chance you sit. But yeah, enough rambling from us. Got a sexy lineup this week. As we mentioned, Dan Hooker, Nadi Kassam, James Vick, Iaquinta, and Brett Okamoto, and then rounding off with your questions. But our first guest is on the line, and Dennis, I believe you're about to introduce him.
Our next guest is currently on his Legend Killer Tour, adding Jim Miller's name to his resume with a super impressive first-round finish. He now joins us back on Submission Radio, fresh from just making it back to New Zealand. The pride of New Zealand, Dan Hangman Hooker. Welcome back to Submission Radio. Thanks for joining us here today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
It's a pleasure, man. We just spoke a few weeks ago, and now you're on again. So, and this time in video, so this is awesome. And we know, obviously, you just got back to New Zealand. Tell us, how did it feel to be coming home after such a big day in the office? We're imagining, parades and possibly even the Prime Minister, were waiting for you when you got off the plane.
I think that's a bit much.
We think it's not enough.
Not too much fanfare.
He's modest.
Got back yesterday and got into the gym this morning. Got my first session back just to knock some jet lag off. But no, I feel good. So I'm back in the gym already and looking to get matched again fairly soon.
Wow, so you're back in the gym already. So I guess that's a good sign. No niggles to the body, nothing that's hurting after the fight, even though it was a short one?
No, I've got nothing. So that's pretty, that's pretty uncommon. So I'd like to take advantage of that. And, it's actually one of my mottos is it's easy to stay fit and it's hard to get fit. So I prefer to stay fit as opposed to try and get fit.
Sure. And is that sort of a regular, I guess, tradition for you? Like after your fights, the ones that you are healthy afterwards and injury-free, you go back into the gym straight away? Because, yeah, it's pretty full on. You're back in New Zealand one day and already doing a session.
Yeah, I always, pretty much after every fight, win or loss, or if I'm banged up or not, I find myself in the gym. I think once I finish a fight, I truly find out that I really have no other hobbies besides this. And it really is all I want to do. So why muck around and sit at home killing time when I could be in the gym getting better?
Well, in all seriousness, your performance this past weekend was incredible. It was an amazing performance, a big, big win. And one of the noticeable things is just how much better you look at lightweight in your last few fights since returning to the weight class. Are you at a point now where you're just like asking yourself, why did I put myself through hell for so long and fight at featherweight?
It's like a necessary progression. So every lesson I kind of learned there, the weight is just one thing I changed. So it's not like I'm doing exactly the same thing, but I changed weight class and now it's all clicking for me. Like the weight class was one of the things that I changed and I noticed and I knew I had to develop. Since then I also moved back to New Zealand. I trained camps. I've moved full-time to city kickboxing and working with my head coach Eugene and the program he puts into place. So I put more emphasis on that being a key to my success as opposed to the weight. So yes, the weight makes a massive improvement to my training and my fight performance, but it's just one of the factors.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll sort of touch on Eugene and obviously city kickboxing a little bit later on. But, the funny thing is, even though you've moved up divisions, you're still, because you're such a tall guy, you're still towering over a lot of guys. What is it like being in there with guys like, say, Ross Pearson and Jim Miller, who are still sort of shorter and smaller, compared to yourself?
It's just, that's just a natural gift that I have that height. I had that height at featherweight. I have that height against a lot of these guys at lightweight. So my reach and my height is just like a natural gift. So now it's me not being so stubborn and it's using that natural gift as opposed to kind of wasting it and pressuring forwards like I used to. So yeah, I've just taken advantage of my natural gifts now.
Want to go to your entrance because John Morgan called out the fact that you had another great entrance sung by Kiwi David Dallas. What was it like walking out in Atlanta against a legend like Jim Miller, having David Dallas blaring through the speakers as you were walking out there?
Yeah, so David Dallas has been pretty good to me. I'm undefeated to David Dallas track. I think I have to keep that going. It's just something about the music and the lyrics, like it gets me in the right frame of mind. Like it keeps me pretty grounded and what he speaks about is kind of similar to how I came up to. So I find a lot of similarities there. So it gets me in the right frame of mind, not too pumped up, not too relaxed. Like it's the exact right frame of mind I have to be in to perform at my best.
When you say some of the things that he talks about are things that you can sort of relate to, what do you mean by that? What kind of things?
Just coming up in New Zealand, like coming up, making a name for yourself, and just some of the things that come with that, like just very similar. Like to have someone that's from a similar position, he's making a name for himself in New Zealand and on the international scene. So we're kind of at similar stages of our lives and our careers. So yeah, I just relate to it really well,
I didn't know David Dallas until you did your entrance, and after listening to that song, I'm like becoming a solid David Dallas fan. So thanks for that. Let's talk about your knee, because that is one of your, I suppose, the weapons that everybody's going to be looking out for from now on. You caught Ross Pearson with it. You were setting it up against Jim Miller, and you got him with it as well. Tell us, where did this knee come from? Obviously, you had it for a long time, but is it something that you guys have been drilling with Eugene over in the gym that you've just been getting better and better at? Where does your confidence come from with that knee?
I feel like it's just like one of my tools, and it's purely down to the range and the distance. Like that, the finishing shot can be anything. It just depends on how far away I am from the guy. That could have been a straight right, that could have been an elbow, it could have been a kick. Like it's just, I was in knee range, so the need made sense. Like you got to pick the right tool for the right job, and the shorter guy, I was throwing my straight right, and it was kind of glancing off the top of his head, and so that tells me that when I was throwing my straight right, he was hunching a bit, he was ducking his head a little bit, so that's why it was sailing over the top of him. So if it's going over the top of him, well then I can kind of counteract that with a knee. So I got the timing of his punch and kind of where his head was going to be. So I took a guess and threw that bad boy up there, and got the job done.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got the job done. When we spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, you were speaking about how much respect you have for Jim Miller, how much of a legend he is. Is this the way that you envision the fight going, sort of getting a fairly quick finish, or in your mind, were you expecting a bit of a war? Because I think a lot of people were expecting a war. Did you exceed your expectations a bit here?
Yeah, I expect a war, but I expect a war every time. Like I go into every fight expecting the hardest fight I've ever had in my life, because if you go into a fight with any other kind of mind frame, like you're going to wipe the floor with this guy and take him out early, and then that doesn't happen, and you're not prepared to go to war, then that's just a terrible mind frame to have. So me, I'd rather go in there. What I was doing, I was prepared to do that for 15 minutes. It just so happens that a shot lands, and I've been in this game so long that I understand that could have happened to either of us. He could have thrown something I didn't see, and that would have been me lying on the ground. So it's just the way the cards fall, and they just fall in my favor, and they've been falling in my favor lately. So I'm thankful and appreciative for that, but you take it with a grain of salt, and it could happen to any of us. I'm not like invincible. I think I do best when I know that I'm well aware of what I'm doing, and just the mix of things I'm doing lately has been working really well for me.
Obviously, you're an honest guy, and being on the mic is what a lot of people like to see you do. After the fight, another highlight was the moment when Paul Felder was interviewing you in the octagon post-fight, and then when he asks you sort of what you want next, you're honest, you're on the spot, and you tell him, hey, what about you and me matchup? What about you and me fight? Did you always plan on saying that after your fight, or was it just something that came to you as he was sort of talking to you in the octagon?
Just like I wanted a ranked opponent, right? Like I said before the fight that I wanted a ranked opponent next after this fight. And so I got a guy in the rankings who's standing right in front of me. So it just makes perfect sense to me. It would be kind of stupid to me to walk out back when I had a guy standing in front of me, walk out back and then say, oh yeah, I want a ranked opponent. Get on Twitter calling out ranked guys when I had one face to face. I'm a man first and foremost, and if I can deal with things face to face, I'm gonna take that route every single time. I prefer face to face. There's nowhere to hide when you're staring a man in the eyes, as opposed to being a little Twitter thug and going out and starting arguments on Twitter. Like, that's not really for me. Like, I don't like arguing on the internet. I'd rather argue in real life.
Well, speaking of that, what did you see in Paul Felder's eyes when you were sort of talking to him about that? Because, I don't know, his reaction to it was he kind of said, yeah, you know, like, we might get it done. But it kind of also seemed like he kind of brushed it off a little bit.
From what I hear, he's a bit busy. So I think he's trying to get a main event spot. And he might have a fight already matched up with someone higher ranked than him. So I can understand where he's coming from. You know, it's not like I was dead set on Paul Felder or, you know, I have to fight Paul Felder. I just asked him because he was standing there. If that would have been any other guy in the top 10, top 15, standing in front of me on the microphone, I would have asked for that guy. It's just purely for the sake that he was standing there.
Well, I was going to say, was that the moment that you actually made the decision to sort of challenge him? Because you brought up the good points before about how you don't want to go in the back and call out a ranked guy. So I'm assuming you didn't make the decision before the fight when you're walking out. You made it right there on the spot that you were going to say, hey, why not me and you?
Well, we had a meeting with the broadcasters and the announcers like earlier on, and I didn't know who was calling the fight. But then when I seen it was Paul Felder, like I kind of...
That's when you knew.
I thought, he's ranked, but for me, I was so focused on Jim Miller that it wasn't like something I processed or something that I thought like, oh, I'm going to say this cheesy one-liner or something like that. I just thought, oh, he's ranked. I would like a ranked guy, but I was focused on Jim, and then so it wasn't until he asked me who I want, and I said, why not you?
Did you get a chance to speak to Sean Shelby? And if so, what did he say? Because obviously you've already done a training session. You're back in New Zealand. You're fresh and you're ready to go. How soon can they get you back in there?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Kind of depends. You know, ranked guys are pretty hard to nail down. So, yeah, pretty much whoever puts a hand up first, like I know he's going to go around. He'll have things that he had in mind or ways he wants to go. Yeah, he said he'd get back to me soon. So hopefully he gets back to me soon.
Do you find that's kind of a bit of an issue almost and a bit tough these days? Because it seems like, especially with the lightweight division, a lot of guys who are ranked, they're really unwilling to fight lower ranked guys. And it seems like, you know, one of the big things about the rankings that's kind of changed things is exactly that, where guys kind of use those rankings to sort of dictate who they fight and specifically who they didn't want to fight. Something that, you know, maybe wasn't as clear before the rankings were implemented.
Yeah, it's a mix, you know, like you always want guys to take the fights, but then once you are in the rankings, like when you are top 10, then you're kind of positioning yourself for a title shot. So that's why we're all here. We're all here to be the champion. There's no one in the top 15, top 50 that doesn't want to be champion, because you get that belt around your waist, and then that bout has pay-per-view points written on it. So that's where one fight with pay-per-view points is worth 20 fights without. So positioning yourself and jockeying yourself for that opportunity of that title can change your life. So why not? You know, it's not like they're hiding from guys or ducking from guys. They're just trying to do the best thing for their career. Like, this is a business at the end of the day. So you gotta be smart about it, and you gotta be a businessman about it. And you can't just, you know, anyone there on principle would fight anyone. But that has shown to be in the past like a surefire way to lose your spot in the rankings.
A very level-headed approach here from Dan Hooker. Let's quickly touch on the fact that there was no performance bonus for that knockout. What was your reaction to that? No 50 Gs.
Oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna get on the internet and cry about it and get everyone to feel sorry for you? Like, that's the way the cookie crumbles, mate. Get back up, get back in there, and get a bonus the next time. That's kind of all you can do. I'm not gonna sit here and cry about it. Like, it is what it is. I've got 2 in the past, and I know I'll get many more in the future. So patience is a virtue.
What do you think you would have spent that 50 Gs on? Just asking if you did have it. Was there some kind of crazy plan? Maybe an upgrade to the Isuzu?
Me. It was sit on my bank account.
So you would just save it, invest it.
Yeah, I would invest it.
Well,
I'm not a stupid man.
That's probably the smartest answer. What did you think of the main event that night? Did you sort of sit around afterwards and give it a watch? And what did you think of Kevin Lee sort of putting on a dominant performance against Barboza, except for that one moment where, it was pretty scary where Barboza landed that wheel kick?
Yeah, that wheel kick was pretty crazy. I was sitting there with David Branch.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We got like a couple of the finishers. So it was like a throw up between the three of us for like who was going to get the bonus.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole fight, we were kind of like, we're happy that Kevin Lee was winning because he missed weight. So therefore he cancels himself out. And then when Barboza landed the spinning kick, everyone else was like cheering. And me and David Branch were the only guys in the room like, no, get up. So we are glad Kevin Lee survived that, but I still missed out. So what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's...
Man, very impressive, very impressive. He handled him. Handled him very easily. I have to go back and watch it because the way he was controlling him in that top posture and his passes were. Did I read he passed him way more times than Khabib passed him? So, yeah, you go back and study Kevin Lee's passing game. Like he's got some very good complete game from the late Robert Follis. So, yeah, he's kind of setting the trend and very impressive performance.
And your division right now, it's one of the most interesting divisions in the UFC. So many big names, so many interesting storylines. What do you think should be happening? Because we've sort of been speaking about this between me and Cass, and we'll be speaking about it throughout the episode. But, Khabib is going to be taking a break till the end of the year, November, December, it looks like. Eddie Alvarez is, trying to push the fact that he wants an interim title in the meantime. People are trying to wonder who should fight Khabib for the title next. If it was sort of up to you, who would you like to see Khabib defend his title against next? And do you think there needs to be an interim title if he's gone till November, December?
Nah, we can't have another interim title. Handle things out
Good answer.
easy. Just for like personal sake, I want to see Khabib fight Kevin Lee. Like that's just a fight I want to see.
More than Khabib versus Conor?
Conor's not coming back that quick.
What do you mean, November, December? You don't think so? That's a long time.
Get out of here.
He could have a jail sentence and then, come back after that.
He ain't fighting with 100 mil in the bank.
But Kevin Lee
I want to see Kevin Lee fight Khabib. I want to see Barboza fight Justin Gaethje. I think that's a fight.
That's a fun fight.
That's a good fight. Yeah.
That's a fight that I overheard that Sean Shelby, if he said they both want it, that's a fight that has to be made. Because I would love the Gaethje fight, but even when I heard Barboza Gaethje, I was like, I want to see that. I want to see that fight.
When you say you wanted the Gaethje fight for yourself, yeah, like you versus Justin Gaethje?
Yeah.
What do you like about that matchup? Is it because he's ranked high, or just you like him as a test as far as an opponent? You like the style, the challenge to solve?
A test. He's like the stupidest guy in the weight class.
What do you mean stupidest? Like as in because he's so wild with his style and tough?
He's wild. Like he says he's not going to develop his game. He's just going to continue to fight like that. Like he's got a couple fights left in his career if he keeps fighting like that. You can't stand there with the best guys in the world and fight like that. Like you're just going to get put to sleep. So I just feel like it's a good time to get him now. In a couple of fights, like his name won't be worth that much. But he has to change his game. Like you can't keep fighting like that. It's a stupid way to fight. But if he must insist on it, I'd like to be the one to take him out. But he still got like a pretty high ranking at the moment, and I don't think they're gonna match someone outside the rankings with number 7. Say I get a top 15 guy like a Paul Felder or something, or a name similar to that. Then I feel like I could get the Gaethje fight after that. But at the moment, I think it's just a little far out of reach.
Well, be careful what you wish for. From what we understand, Gaethje's going to be out for quite some time until the end of the year. So who knows? Maybe a big win mid this year might get you that fight with him. Let's quickly talk about your gym there and your trainer. I mean, obviously, we know Israel Adesanya is absolutely killing it at the moment. You're absolutely killing it at the moment. You mentioned at the start of the interview some of these changes that have been going on. Let's sort of delve into that. What's it like working with the team that you're working with now? And what are some of these changes that you've sort of been working behind the scenes that fans may not know about?
More just with my training, like I've been like moving around the last few years, and there hasn't been like real consistency to my training. So really getting back into New Zealand, working from City Kickboxing exclusively, and committing myself to Eugene and the program that he's put into place is showing like big dividends to my game. We just have a good program, like a good training structure. Like it's all structured really well. Everything that we do is like planned out, and it's very methodical and very systematic. So that's set in place, and I feel like Eugene has one of the best eyes in the game, and there are a lot of other very intelligent coaches that have good eyes. So we're just constantly getting better, and we're drawing out like the best fighters in New Zealand, and we're all working together. And it's not like there's a real secret to it, like we've got this big secret we're hiding. We just have the best guys pushing each other and outworking everyone else. Like people put a lot of what Israel does down to like natural ability, or you know, he's just like a freak athlete or something like that. But in the reality of it, he's not. He's just very intelligent. He's a very smart fighter. You know, the top 2 inches of his game are the best that I have come across. And then he just works incredibly hard. Like he talks, but he backs that up. You know, he's in the gym outworking everyone else. Like he's one of the hardest workers in the gym, which people put to natural ability, and they kind of discredit him as being some super freak athlete, but he's just got an incredible work ethic, and he outworks guys. So it's just an incredible work ethic that we're kind of, everyone's there working hard, and we're getting good results.
Last time we spoke to you, we brought up Israel, and you said that you guys were kind of frenemies. What exactly did you mean by that?
Frenemies.
Yeah.
we like push each other, but it's like not like cheerlead each other, you know? Like we don't stand there like, yeah, go, you can do 10 more. We're like, I bet you can't do 10 more, man. Like you ain't got it. You ain't got it. And we kind of just challenge each other more than anything else. Like it's like a rivalry competition inside the gym. Like we're friends outside the gym, and then we're just like stone cold rivals inside the gym, just like fueling each other. And I think you've seen like there's a few like sparring sessions online, nothing like too hard or anything like that, but we will just talk to each other like constantly. The day that we run into people that talk shit is like not going to be a bad day, because the way we give it to each other in training is like we'll just go at each other, man. We're just mouthing off at each other for the full 15 minutes. So it's frenemies. That's where that comes from.
Wow. Well, look, Dan, we really appreciate it. Just quickly, did you manage to find those people who threw a banana at you while you were jogging or something? We saw there was a video on social media. You were not too happy with these banana peeling, throwing people.
He's still on the loose. I'm yet to find.
The search is still continuing, right?
Is there a task force? Is there a plan of how to find this person? All of New Zealand should be alerted. This is a crime.
Yeah. We're tracking him still. All right. He's still on the loose.
As we let you go, as we wrap up, any messages for the division? Any calls to action? Obviously, you're a man looking for an opponent. You want to get in there nice and quick, looking for someone with that little number next to their name. Any calls to action, Dan?
Calls to action. Anyone in the top 15, man. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and nag for an opponent, but there are guys out there that want this fight. Like, I'm sure of it. And it won't be too long until I get my name in the rankings. So it's already in the process, so no need to ask.
All right, guys. Well, make sure to follow the legend killer Dan Hooker on Twitter at Dan the Hangman and Dan Hangman on Instagram. And don't forget to hit up Engage for your Dan Hooker t-shirts. Obviously, you guys know Engage is a great company based out of Australia. Lots of cool designs, and you guys can check that out at engageind.com. They've supported the show previously. Dan, Thank you so much for taking that time, jumping on Submission Radio. Not only do you do a workout, you also do an interview with us. So we're really appreciative. Enjoy New Zealand. Hope you get a few cheat meals in. We're excited to see what happens next.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Stipe Miocic, UFC heavyweight champion, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. The next guest is coming off one of the craziest title shots in UFC history. The man who went 5 rounds against Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 223. He is the Iron Sheik of MMA, here to make everybody humble. Long Island's own Raging Al Iaquinta. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you today, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How's everything?
Good. So, Al, it's been a couple of weeks now. Tell us, how's life been for you since UFC 223?
Fat. I've just been eating a lot.
What have you been eating?
Everything. Italian ice cream, Italian pizza, ice cream, pizza, ice cream.
It's just an ice cream diet. I remember you told us ice cream's your favorite food. What's the flavor you normally go for?
Anything. I mix it up. Try a little bit from everywhere. We have this place called Carvel, and they make these cakes that are like chocolate, and then it's got a layer of crunchies, and then it's got vanilla, and then it's got icing on the top. That's probably my go-to, the ice cream, Carvel ice cream cake.
Wow.
Well, let's talk about what's going on. Did you go straight back into work afterwards, or did you have a little bit of time to recover and enjoy sort of the moment that was the craziness of that weekend?
Oh yeah, it took me a while to get that soreness out. I was sore for a while, a week. Sore for a week, and my face was swollen up pretty good. I was pretty banged up. Yeah, it took a little time, just relaxed. Got myself back to being presentable and right back at it.
Well, yeah, we can see you back to your handsome self, and you got the that's the real estate polo you got on now, right?
Yes, sir.
Representing. Were you working today?
Home Smart Premier Living. I was. I have a buddy of mine, Pat Brown, and his fiance Jessie. They're looking out in Long Island, so I showed them 4 houses today, and they like a couple of them. So we'll see what happens.
With the craziness of that weekend, and you obviously being across on all the different media outlets and the news outlets, did you notice an influx of people contacting you, trying to get you to organize for them to buy a home through you after that weekend? Are you getting more calls now in that regard?
No, absolutely. Definitely has been good for business. I think I showed a lot of heart in the fight, and people respect that. And if I can push through that, I can do anything. They know that. And selling a house is, it's what I do. So anything I do, I put my all into it, and people see that, they respect it, and they come to me for help. For
sure. Well, speaking of your work as a real estate agent, something interesting happened early today. Tony Ferguson took a bit of a shot at you. I think it was just a few hours ago, I think, on Twitter, when he referred to you as a non-full-time fighter, real estate agent, ranked number 11. Basically how, he shouldn't have been stripped. What did you think when you saw that? You guys had a bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, I was just like, dude, shut the fuck up. Who is that guy to say anything? He had a title shot, and he freaking blew it. He tripped on a wire. That's like, I don't know. It's like nature's weeding you out. You're being weeded out. You're like a kid that trips over kids trip over things. Adults, like, you're a professional athlete and you can't not trip over a wire, and then you're gonna just like disappear for a while. You're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? If that happened to me, if I had to pull out of a title fight because I tripped over a wire, you're not hearing me talk shit on Twitter at all. I'm gonna hide somewhere. I'm not gonna act tough. He's acting tough. Like right now, a middle school kid could kick the shit out of him right now because he can't do anything. You can't talk shit when you're in a state that you're in. The guy he's so weird. He just doesn't, like, who cares about that guy? He's really just good at fighting, and that's it. If it wasn't for fighting, he'd be like a worthless person. You know what I mean? There's no point to Tony Ferguson besides him, like, honestly, really, like, people beating his ass. He gets dropped every fight, and he's out of his mind in fighting. That's the only reason that people like watching him get his ass kicked and come back and win. That's the only thing that Tony Ferguson's good at in like the world. He's no one likes his personality. He's a weird dude. Like, I don't even know what's the point of that guy? There's no point. Just go away. You tripped on a wire, and I got the title shot. Now you're gonna come at me? I've fought with worse injuries than that, guaranteed, in my career. And you get the fight week, you're fighting. You don't pull out of a fight during fight week. Don't come after me because I took advantage of a situation that his fucking, he couldn't capitalize on. The guy's won like, how many fights in a row has he won? 10 fights and he still hasn't fought for a title? Like, there's a reason for that. You know what I mean? No one likes you. Go away.
He finished it off by saying, one day we'll see each other in the octagon if you keep winning. #tough guys. What did you make of that?
Who knows? I can't make up anything that guy says. I don't know. I can't make it. I really have no idea what the fuck that guy's talking about at all. I don't know. He said he was rooting for me, but then he goes and says that. Like, I don't know. The guy's weird. He's making fun of my grammar. Then he's talking like, like I look at he like capitalizes letters, and the first letter of every word is capitalized. Then he's making fun of. I put your instead of your, like, same shit. It's fucking Twitter. Shut up. Who cares? I don't know. That guy's just annoying. He really needs to just go away until he can fight. And then once you fight, just fight, dude. Everyone likes you fighting. Not a single person likes that guy. Everyone's on Twitter. Everyone's on that I talk to. They're like, just shut up, man. Everyone was looking forward to that fight. He disappointed so many people. And I come in, save the day. Don't freaking say shit about me, bro. He's been dropped in every fight. I drop someone, I kill that. I put them out. So it's not, it's a different style matchup than me and Khabib. And I didn't train right for that fight. That guy, and especially right now, I could beat the shit out of Tony Ferguson with my pinky finger. The guy can't even walk. You can't talk shit right now.
Well, I mean, obviously, one of the biggest stories there was the fact that you stepped up on almost minutes' notice. Where does that moment and I guess whole experience rank for you, sort of in your career so far? And in some ways, did it trump some of your biggest wins just because of the magnitude of the event? Fighting for a world title, and to top it all off, fighting in your hometown of New York.
Yeah, I just wish I would have got the win, man. I almost wish I would have just known that was going to happen. I almost knew it was going to happen, but I didn't want to train for that fight because I knew if I trained for it, then it wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? So I was like, I don't know. I just was focused on what I was doing, and then when it started unraveling, I was like, I would joke in the gym all the time, like, one of these guys getting hurt. I'm fighting for the title. Volante texted me. He was like, bro, you said this was going to happen. And I did. I asked John Volante. I said to him, this is going to happen. I'm going to fight for a title, guaranteed. And I was kind of like half joking, but in my back of my mind, I was like, it actually is a very good possibility. I kind of thought it might have been Khabib that was going to get hurt, or not make weight or something, but it ended up being Ferguson, and then Holloway, then Pettis, then I don't even know what was going on with all that nonsense. Felder, I was the guy. I don't think none of those guys wanted it really. I don't think any of them really wanted to fight.
What do you mean, like Felder and Pettis and those guys?
Maybe Felder. I don't know. Felder might have. I don't know, but Pettis, I don't think so. I think he priced himself out of the market, so to speak. You know what I mean?
You mean like on purpose to not take that fight?
Yeah, I mean, there's a price for everything. If you want, if I don't really want to fight him, I'll be like $3 million, $5 million. And if they pay, sure, I'll go in there and, if I don't think I'm ready, I'll whatever, but take a payday kind of thing. There's a price for everyone's ass whooping, but it was a fight that I really thought I could win. I made a few mistakes early on. I got those 2 takedowns I think really the takedown in the first round, he held me down the whole first round, and in the second round, held me down the whole second round, and he wasn't really beating me up too bad. The other guys he's fought, he's really beat up a lot worse. But then that third round came, I started defending the takedowns. I was a little behind him. He was just he was a little fresher. I had only really trained for 3 rounds. And, I just wish I kind of paced myself. I did the best that I could. I really don't have too many regrets. I fought him the best that I could. I tried to conserve energy where I thought it was smart to conserve energy. I tried to use energy where I thought I had a chance to finish the fight. I just couldn't get it done, And hats off to Khabib. He's an animal. He's an absolute savage. So, I haven't gotten an ass kicking like that in a while, and hopefully the last one for a good amount of time.
Oh, for sure.
It's the worst ass whooping that Tony Ferguson could ever put on me. That guy would get dropped in a silly second. Fucking guy gets dropped. Kevin Lee dropped that guy. Kevin Lee can't drop anybody.
We got to get your thoughts. Sorry, go on.
No, I'm good.
We've got to get your thoughts on Kevin Lee's performance in a second, but just sort of on Khabib, you mentioned how he's an animal and he's a savage. Obviously it was an interesting and sort of famous moment where you were on the Amao and you're talking about how you'd need to be paid $1 million to fight Khabib, and sort of everyone in the lightweight division kind of speaks about him as if, it's almost like he's a boogeyman. But being in there in the cage with him, did that sort of humanize him, and did it change your perception of him a little bit? Kind of like, you know what? Obviously, he won the fight, but did it kind of make you think, like, you know what? Maybe he's not as, I guess, I don't know, mythical as maybe some people would have thought going in, now that you've been there with him for 5 rounds?
No, I knew that going into it. You know what I mean? Every fight is different. Every fighter has a different style. I knew that, my wrestling's good. I wish I would have been able to really challenge him with the wrestling and kind of compete with him with the wrestling. My wrestling's good. I kind of just I felt like I could have done more as far as the wrestling was concerned. I kind of just waited and thought that I'd try to save myself for the striking. I knew when we got on the feet, I'd have a lot more of an advantage. And wrestling could take a lot out of you. So he put me down every time I was trying to defend those takedowns, and then he just controlled me. You know what I mean? What was the original question? I'm kind of old.
I actually wanted to ask you, what did you think about Kevin Lee's performance? Because you already answered my question. What did you think about Kevin Lee's performance over the weekend?
Kevin Lee looked good, man. Kevin Lee looked good. He scored a smart fight. Southpaw came out. See, I give Kevin Lee credit when credit is due. That guy doesn't give anyone credit. Jesus. That guy had,
You're giving him more credit than he gave you. He was talking about how you're a sacrificial lamb. This is the nicest you've ever been to Kevin Lee.
No, because I give credit where credit is due. He looked good.
Mm-mm.
He came out southpaw to kind of throw off the. Listen, I'll give him credit where credit is due, but I'm still his fucking daddy. I beat the shit out of him. I got his number forever. He knows that. But he's not taking me down. But he controlled that whole fight. He looked strong. He looked powerful. He wore him out on the ground, and then on the feet he kind of had his way with it. And the biggest thing that stuck out in my mind with Kevin Lee is Kevin Lee got kicked in the head and was wobbling all over the place, and he could have found a way out of that fight, and he managed to stick it out. I think should have let him up. He should have never went to the ground with him. He should just let him up, and I think he would have won that fight. But Kevin Lee could have looked for a way out, and he said he was not losing that fight. Kevin Lee drank the Kool-Aid. He came out looking across the ring like he was a tough guy, and he backed it up. So definitely gotta give him some credit for that. But I still kick his freaking ass.
Well, I mean, it's interesting right now in the division because it's a Khabib's champion. There's a lot of guys sort of vying for the next title shot. Who do you think should fight him next for the title? Do you think Conor McGregor should still have the shot now that Khabib announced that he wants to come back sort of in Madison Square Garden in November, December? Or do you think one of these other guys like Kevin Lee or Dustin Poirier might deserve it instead?
Yeah. Kevin Lee, well, McGregor, I think, that's what the UFC would want. If he can get his legal nonsense out of the way. Dustin, Kevin Lee, Eddie Alvarez is talking about fighting him. I don't know what he's talking about.
Eddie Alvarez is talking about a potential interim title. What do you think about that notion?
Fight for an interim title for what? For who would he fight for an interim title? Not Khabib. He'd fight somebody else.
I think he mentioned Lee or something like that. I mean, you mentioned Conor McGregor's legal dramas. We all saw the craziness that happened on the bus, and you released a video as well from your perspective. But just telling us, what was it like being on that bus as McGregor was throwing that stuff at the windows with Screw?
Going back, an interim title for Eddie Alvarez wants that interim title. Khabib just fought, and he's going to fight in November. So why are you going to fight? Why does Eddie Alvarez think he deserves an interim title shot when it's just a number one contender fight? That's all it is a contender fight. Why interim title on it? You're going to fight, Khabib is the champ. He's going to wait till November. Figure it out. You got to fight somebody. You don't fight for somebody for a title when there's three contenders. Fight Kevin Lee or fight Poirier again. Honestly, he should fight Poirier again. That fight, they have unfinished business, and I heard he keeps turning down that fight. So I think he needs to take that fight. But yeah, that bus was crazy. That whole thing was insane.
Was it as bad as people sort of made it out to be? I know a lot of fighters were pretty shaken. There was glass flying all over the place. Was it pretty crazy when you were in there? A lot of fighters said it was pretty scary, and employees obviously got hurt. Did it look like a pretty crazy situation when you were in there?
It got pretty crazy pretty quickly. It was on the other side of the bus, and they just started pulling away, and I just heard banging. So I kind of thought that someone was. I almost thought someone was getting run over by the bus.
Jeez.
Wow. They were banging on it like, stop, you're running, you're killing somebody, And so I was like, shit, this is crazy. And then someone comes flying through the window, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, enough with the, this might be like a terrorist attack, someone shooting at it, like a crazy person going nuts, like one of these schools shoot, like I don't know, the Waffle House guy now, this and that, maybe somebody's got something against fire. I don't know, who knows? I was trying to almost like just see what the heck was going on, stay calm, almost like laugh about it, try to keep it, because everyone was freaking out. And then I saw Conor. I was like, oh, this all makes sense. But still, it's a little scary because you still don't know what's going on. It's like the bus is getting attacked by a bunch of people. But once I realized he was going after Khabib, and that was what the deal was, I was like, all right. I just whipped out my phone and started recording.
Is it true that Khabib apparently laughed through the whole thing and didn't really faze him?
Yeah, man, he was cool. I was sitting right in front of him, and he started yelling at him. I think in Russian they were yelling at Conor, and they wanted to get off the bus. Ali and Khabib and the UFC guys were holding everyone on the bus. And I was just kind of going along for the ride, like, seeing, I was like, wow, what a crazy sequence of events. I thought we were just going back to the hotel, and now we got to give police statement. They said we were going to have to give police statements. I never actually had to, but yeah, that was intense. That was an intense 3 days. That happened on Thursday. Then Friday was the weigh-ins. all the nonsense with Holloway's out, then Pettit, and this and that. So I find out the next day I find out I'm fighting in the main event, headlining the Barclays Center, and then the following night after that I go 5 rounds with the champ. You know what I mean? So that's probably, I don't think I can top that 3 days ever.
Yeah.
I can. I don't know. I think that took a couple of years off my life for sure. That was 3. I didn't really sleep at all those 3 days. I was like wired, you know. There's so much excitement and so much energy. So yeah, my adrenaline took me through that whole weekend.
Well, you did a really big solid for the UFC, and I mean, you've spoken to us about the fact that you and Dana White haven't always been on the same page, and you and the UFC have had your issues in the past. But do you feel like this is almost like a fresh start? I guess the UFC would be very appreciative for what you did for him, saving the event, UFC 223. Do you feel like you guys are almost in a better place now than we used to be?
I hope so. I think so. You know, I got a bunch of love from all the employees. They all called me and, you know, thanked me for taking the fight and told me how much they appreciated it, how good the fight was and whatnot. So yeah, that was cool, and we'll see how it goes going forward. You know, I think there's still a few things that need to be addressed for sure, but yeah, we'll see how everything plays out.
What are you thinking as far as the timeline? Because, you know, over the last couple of years, there's sort of been big breaks between your fights. You know, getting in there, fighting for a world title. Does this make you sort of want to get back in there sort of quicker? When do you think we'll sort of see you back in the octagon?
Absolutely. I want to get back in there soon. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of opponents. We'll see what kind of... I need the right fight at the right time at the right place. And got to make sense at this point, you know.
And the right price as well, right?
That's of course. That might be the most, you know. It's all an equation. It all gets, you know, put together, and hopefully it's got to make sense and go out there and have some more fun.
Do you have to renegotiate a new contract? Because I think I remember you saying that your last one was. By the way, we'll let you go in a moment because we know it's super late there, Al. But just
good, man.
Dude, we really, really appreciate your time. We know you just had dinner and stuff like that, and it's late over there, so really appreciate it. But just quickly, I think your last fight was a one-fight deal, or you said you were looking at it as a one-fight deal, and then, of course, there was 223. So does this mean you got to do a new contract or renegotiate for when you fight again?
Yeah, we got some talking to do, depending on, you know, who the opponent is, and we'll figure it out. It's all up in the air right now. But yeah, we got to sit down and figure some stuff out.
And I guess the thing that we spoke about last time, and it was, you know, very disappointing that you couldn't come to terms with the UFC. They didn't offer you the money that you wanted, and you didn't get to be on that first Madison Square Garden card. So what would it mean to you to possibly fight in November at Madison Square Garden? I guess that's the card that Khabib's sort of focusing on. Is that a card that you're focusing on as well, to be on as well?
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's almost full circle. It's almost like you've come full circle if that happens, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how I felt about fighting in New York. There's just a lot of... I don't know. I like to travel, you know? But obviously, if it's the right fight and it's in New York, I love it. I love having, you know, my friends and family come and watch the fight on a train ride. But...
do you feel like it's almost a little bit more pressure because your family's there, your friends are there, you know, you're kind of the hometown hero, so people are expecting a bit more from you?
I almost like that, you know, the more people eyes on me and the more crowd, I like that. I don't know, it's just I like to go away, especially in November. I'd rather fight in Australia in November.
Hey.
This is funny because I was going to say you're actually undefeated in Australia. You fought here before, the climate's good, and we usually have November cards. That's the thing. I mean, look, it might be a fight night. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think we're going to be lucky enough to get a pay-per-view, but November's pretty much the thing for the last, I don't know how many years, every November we've had a card. So if you're willing to come down and fight here, hopefully, you know, the equation adds up and you fight here because we'd love to have you. Hopefully you get a nice, you know, a good opponent and a good, you know, pay rise. a fat check, a good price. In the meantime, guys, by the way, Al, we really appreciate you jumping on the program, man. We'll let you go because we know it's late over there. You had your dinner, and you're taking the time to sort of, go through all these stories with us. But don't forget to follow them at Iaquinta on Twitter and Instagram. A lot of great stuff there. A great follow. Like we said, a fun back and forth between Tony Ferguson that you would have missed if you weren't following the man. And HomeKnockout.com. That's the website, right?
That's it, man. At Iaquinta on Instagram and Twitter, HomeKnockout.com. I want to thank American Ethanol, one of my sponsors. And Team Saralongo, love those guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We love them as well, man. We'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your night, and thanks so much for chatting. We'll get you on soon.
Thanks, Al.
Appreciate it, guys. I'll see you in Sydney.
We'll see you in November.
Catch you there.
See you later.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrius Johnson, the UFC flyweight champion of the world, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is making his Submission Radio debut, currently on a 4-fight win streak in the lightweight division. He joins us live from Texas. We're, of course, talking about the Texecutioner himself, James Vick. Welcome to Submission Radio. It's great to have you on the program, James. First time. It feels like this should have happened a while ago.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm happy to be here. I'm glad to talk to y'all. I fought in Australia before. I love the Australian people. I had a great time there. I was there for a long time, almost 3 weeks when I was there, and great to talk to you guys.
Yeah. We have great memories. I know that Jake Matthews, who you beat in Australia, maybe not the greatest memories of you, but obviously, you came in there, you pulled a big upset the Aussie crowd, but it was a great performance. Before we even get into it, obviously we've got to kick things off by congratulating you on the birth of your son, James William Vick Jr. Tell us, man, how's parenting life treating you? We imagine there's not much sleep in the books for you the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, actually, it's been pretty good. He doesn't cry as much as, I anticipated, and that's always a good thing. So I expected the worst, and now he's not doing too bad. He's a baby, so he does cry, but he's not like a big crier, and he'll wake up every few hours, and I'm actually sleeping pretty good because, my girl's breastfeeding, so it's not like I can really get up and breastfeed him. So I kind of get to sleep, and then
nice.
Her mom came. My girlfriend's from Hawaii, so her mom came to visit and has been here for the last couple of weeks. So she's been making it easier for us. So that's been helping too. But she's actually going home tomorrow. So then we're going to see how the real challenge is.
Well, that's pretty cruisy. I mean, it seems like pretty nice so far. Is there anything challenging so far? Anything that you found interesting? Any big changes?
Actually, really nothing. I mean, just I'm excited to see my kid grow, and he's actually gained a lot of weight in the last couple of weeks. He's about 2 weeks old, so he's grown a lot and he's gaining weight. And I love him, and I already love being a dad after only 2 weeks. It's a good feeling. It's different, when you finally have one of your own. It's just a different feeling, and it's been a great experience the last couple of weeks, and nothing hard yet though. And the baby's healthy, everything's good, so hopefully everything stays the way it is.
I know you haven't had a fight yet since obviously the baby coming into the picture, but do you feel like it's changed you in any way, like in terms of your motivation? Do you think you'll feel it now when you're fighting and when you go into the gym and training, et cetera, you've got that different motivation and why you're doing this?
See, I don't know, because I hear a lot of people saying that, but honestly, like, my motivation for fighting, maybe financially, yeah, of course, because, you always want to have money to, for your family and to make things easier for everyone, on you, your wife, your kids, financially maybe motivation. But as far as everything else, like, my goal has always been to be a world champion, and that doesn't change whether I have a kid or whether I don't have a kid. As long as I'm healthy and I can fight, I want to be a world champion, and I've always wanted to be a world champion. And I can't say that I've worked harder because I'm going to work harder because I've always worked hard my whole career, and I've worked harder than I feel like everyone I've ever fought, I've worked harder than them. So that's never going to change whether I have a baby or not. I mean, I think, probably financially, yeah, it's something I've, that's crossed my mind a couple times already, that I, obviously winning, you get more money. So, winning, helps you financially, but, my goal is always to win. So I don't think it's changed me too much in that perspective.
And finally, for all those expecting parents who are listening to the program right now, and let's be honest, we have a lot of expecting parents that listen to Submission Radio. What is a James Vick tip? What is a James Vick baby tip a secret, something that you've realized over the last few weeks that you can share with us that's going to help a lot of people out once they have their first newborn?
Man, I really don't have any. I feel bad. Sorry for bad advice. I really don't have any. I mean, our baby's been really good. He hasn't cried very much. He basically only cries if he needs his diaper changed or he's hungry. That's pretty much the only two. And usually if you check and his diaper needs changed, you change it. He stops crying. And then if he's hungry, you feed him. And then, you know, maybe every now and then you'll need to pick him up and walk him a little bit when he's crying. But then he'll stop crying, give him his pacifier. But besides that, I mean, it's been pretty easy. It really has. So up to this point, you know, he is only 2 weeks old. So let's pray it stays that way. But I don't really, I mean, I guess just enjoy it, you know, and if you're a busy person, you know, I know a lot of people work, you know, long hours. Some people work 10, 12 hours a day, you know. So if you have the time with your kid, you know, I guess just enjoy it and, you know, hold them or him or her and play with them and, you know, and just, you know, talk to them so they hear your voice and, you know, skin on skin contact, just do all that. And I think, you know, I mean, I can't really give parenting advice.
We'll save that for a later volume. Maybe a James Vick appearance later down the track. We'll talk to you in a few months, and hopefully it's still cruisy. Hopefully you're not like, dude, this has been an absolute nightmare. I'm not sleeping. I've got a fight coming up. But in all seriousness, let's talk fighting. Obviously, the lightweight division, your division, arguably more stacked than it's ever been. It's the UFC's premier division. There's a new champion now, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Just going back a couple of weeks, you know, what did you think about, you know, the big changes in the division and I guess Khabib's performance over Iaquinta and sort of how he's settling in as champion?
You know, everyone knows pretty much that the lightweight division is the hardest division, and we have by far way more fighters. We have more fighters than some of these weight classes combined, 2 or 3 of these weight classes combined. And you know, it's always going to be tough, and there's always going to be someone else. And just when they act like someone's unbeatable, someone else comes up. And you know, this is the nature of all sports. You know, I thought, you know, Khabib looked good, but I think, you know, I actually saw Iaquinta. Me and him are good friends. We lived in the Ultimate Fighter House together. And, you know, I saw him on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, and I thought he made some good points. You know, basically he'd only fought 90 seconds in the last 3 years, you know, and then he turned around and goes 5 rounds with, you know, what people consider the best guy in the division, you know. So I thought he did very good. And, I mean, I think, you know, Khabib is good, you know. He's pretty much what you see is what you get. You know, he's just a dominant grappler. You know, his striking's not great, but he hasn't had to use it up to this point, realistically, you know, to get wins. And it's he's obviously not an easy fight for anybody. And then, you know, but there's plenty of people coming up, and you know, there's there's been 3 lightweight fights 3 weeks in a row, and you know, they were all good fights and stuff like that. But I'm excited about the future, and I think I can beat or compete with any of those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Just sort of on Khabib and some of the things you mentioned, Al saying, did it change your perception on Khabib after that fight? Because while it was a very, very dominant performance, obviously the scorecards were insane for Khabib's favor, a lot of people also found that to be a sort of humanizing performance where, you know, Al was shrugging off takedowns towards the later rounds. I'm wondering if you as a lightweight kind of saw that and thought, okay, I can definitely see some holes in his game, you know, if and when we fight.
Well, you know, I also, you know, I watched a lot of podcasts and stuff as well, and I saw Javier Mendez, Khabib's coach on the MMA Hour, and I thought he made great points as well. I thought he said, you know, he's like, when Joe Rogan was, you know, kind of dissing Khabib's striking, you know, Javier Mendez is like, you know, well, obviously we know he's not a striker, you know, we you know, so I don't think that, really, I don't think I really learned anything new from watching the fight, but I mean, I think that, you know, it comes down to with Khabib, can people get up? He's going to take most people down that he fights, if not all of them. Can they get up? Like, I'm confident if we fight, I can get to my feet. If I fought Khabib Nurmagomedov in a 5-round fight, he could totally take me down. He could probably take me down 10 times. But in my mind, I'm always going to get up. There hasn't nobody been able to hold me down yet. And my philosophy on that is, it's like when he fought Abel Trujillo, actually a guy I fought too. Mm-hmm. He set the UFC takedown record and took the guy down 21 times. Well, what I saw from that is a dude got up 21 times, and if I get to my feet 21 times, I'm throwing hands, you know, and I'm throwing kicks, and I'm gonna land some shots, you know. And that fight, I remember going back and watching that fight with him and Abel Trujillo. It was just basically wrestling with not really much damage, you know, in the fight, because Abel was able to get up to his feet a lot. So I think that I mean, there's plenty of guys, you know. I think that, you know, I think that there's plenty of guys that even for me that could probably take me down. But when I get to, there can't nobody hold me down on the cage. I haven't been held down yet. When I get my back to the cage, I'm going to get up. And I think Khabib's takedowns favor my cage get-ups because all of his takedowns come off the cage when he clinches people and trips them and throws them. He doesn't really shoot doubles on the open mat, you know. So I think we're going to be close to the fence, and I think I'm going to be able to get to my feet every time. And until someone proves me different, you ain't going to tell me any different because I believe that with all my heart.
Well, Khabib says he won't be fighting till sort of the end of the year, and Eddie Alvarez is bringing up the point that he believes there should be an interim title in the division. Where do you kind of sit on that, James? Do you think Khabib's going to be away long enough for an interim title to be created? And where do you kind of sit on this whole, I suppose, millions of interim titles in the UFC situation now?
Yeah, it's kind of a joke. I mean, I don't think that there should be an interim title for him waiting for. Okay, so he fought in what was he fought in April for him to wait until November for Madison Square Garden. Why the hell should there be an interim title fight for him to wait 6 or 7 months? Come on, it's not like he's out for 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of stupid. Like he's the champion, he won, let him be the champion, and an interim belt for him to. If he was talking about waiting a whole year and a half, then yeah, whatever. But I mean. Or if he got injured and couldn't fight for a year and a half or 2 years, yeah, things come different, you know. But, I mean, at the end of the day, if he's fighting in November, talking about fighting in the MSG card in November, I mean, that's not too much time to be saying. You know, most champions only fight twice a year nowadays. Anyway, if you look at it, really the only one that's been consistent with fighting more than twice a year has probably been Mighty Mouse. You know, so that's not uncommon.
And even Tyron Woodley, like, obviously he's been sidelined since last July, but before that, I think he fought like 4 times within 12 months, and now they've got an interim title, so we share your sentiments. Obviously, another big fight in the lightweight division was Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. What did you think of that? That was, I believe, the other weekend ago.
I mean, it went how I expected. Gaethje takes beatings. The dude's. I mean, I'm so sick of Justin Gaethje. This guy, he was running his mouth a while back. Actually, a few days before that fight, he did an interview with MMA Junkie and was running his mouth about me. But it went how I expected. The dude fights like that because he has no skills. He has to fight like that. He acts like he's such a he's doing it for the fan. Well, he's short. He's not flexible. He can't kick above his waist. He has to throw low kicks. He's not fast. He's not strong. He has to fight the way he fights. You know, I'll give him props. He's made a good career out of what he has. You know, he's been dealt a shitty card in life, I guess, with the skill set and his physical attributes. So he's did good with it by being tough. But basically, that's every Justin Gaethje fight. He's gonna try. Pretty much, it's always gonna be like that because he really doesn't have the ability to change that, unless maybe he used his wrestling background, maybe. But as far as striking wise, he has to be. That's the type of striker he has to be. And it's either he breaks people down with leg kicks, or they catch him and knock him out. And used to, when he was fighting, guys that weren't that good outside of the UFC, he could always break them down. But now he's running into the guys who can take it and then have more skills to finish him, and that's what you're seeing.
And you mentioned the trash talk that he had for you before that fight. I mean, it's been some time since that now. How do you feel about it now? Because we all remember he said to MMA Junkie, like you mentioned, that next time that he sees you, he's going to, try and slap you and try and do all this stuff. How are you feeling about Gaethje now? Are you sort of past him, past the trash talk, or does it still bother you, the stuff that he said?
It would never bother me. I mean, like, come on. Here's the thing. I worked at I worked at bars bouncing for like 10 years. I worked at bars and bouncing. Like, I deal with drunk idiots that talk crap all the time, and then they were trying to street fight me. So I'm not really worried about Justin Gaethje trying to street fight me, So if he wants to come up and slap me, well, yeah, we already know better than that shit. He won't even if I even see the dude and he gets within striking distance, he's getting struck. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna stick him in his mouth. If he even walks up within 2 foot of me, I'm gonna hit him, because I'm just gonna assume he's gonna walk up my face, either hit me or push me or something, and I ain't gonna let him get to that point. If he gets within distance, I'm gonna punch him in his face. So I'm not really worried about Justin Gaethje. As far as getting a fight with him, yeah, I would totally fight him. I mean, it's sad that the dude's 1-2 in the UFC, and he's still going to be ranked above me, when I'm 9-1 in the UFC. And, a lot of people want to say, oh, well, he's lost the top guys, da-da-da-da. Well, he came in, okay, so you lost the one guy. The only guy you beat was on a 3-fight losing streak when you came in, and now the guy's not even in the top 10 in featherweight. and you beat the one guy you beat was on a 3-fight losing streak, and the other 2 guys you beat, you lost to, dude. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't make sense how this dude is ranked. All the other guys he fought outside of this organization wouldn't even be ranked in the top 40. Like, all the guys outside of the UFC in the World Series that he fought would not even be ranked in the top 40 in the UFC, and they're hyping him up. And I mean, it's cool. I get it. He's a fan favorite, and he, you know, he is he's good for promoters. I agree, you know. But I mean, the dude's, you know, he's already half punch drunk, and he's gonna have a short career. And, you know, I mean, would I fight him? Yeah, I'll fight him because he's ranked higher than me. I don't really have a personal vendetta against the guy or anything. I don't care. Motherfucker ain't gonna slap me. I ain't worried about that. But it's just like, if he was ranked below me at this point, no, I wouldn't be interested. But what's sad is, you know, he has more losses than he does wins in the UFC now, and he's ranked above me. So yeah, I'll still take the fight for sure.
Sure. I want to touch on what you said before, and that was you being a bodyguard, because that was actually going to be the next question. You were on MMA Junkie Radio. You said that you spent a long time as a bouncer, and you'd probably been in more than 500 street fights, which is just insane. Is that true? Have you really had that many? I didn't
say 500. I didn't say 500. I said about 100. I've probably been in over 100.
Okay.
But
how come you got into so many street fights? Was it just kind of a rowdy bar where there was so many altercations? And can you please tell us, like, if you're happy to share a story that stands out to you, something interesting that happened when you were sort of a bouncer of an altercation?
Well, first of all, the reason why, plus growing up, I've been in a lot of street fights too. But so it probably is well over 100. But a lot of it was multiple bars. I worked at there's a place here in Fort Worth, Texas, where I live. It's called the Stockyards. It's like a country type, and they let like a lot of young kids in there, like 19-year-olds that are just coming in looking for trouble. I worked there when I was like 21, so I was still young then. And then I worked down there for about 1.5 years. I worked in downtown, and then I worked in strip clubs. So I've worked in 2 or 3 strip clubs as well. And
as a bouncer, right?
Yeah,
just making things clear, James.
James Vick on the pole.
I was actually it was a woman's strip club, not a man's.
Yeah, of course.
But I was actually a manager there too. But we kind of had like, and the thing is we kind of had like double duties. Like if we managed and I sold bottles and VIPs and stuff like that, I still would, if something went wrong, I was the young guy that could fight. So they would always call me, you know. They would, we mostly had older managers that worked there, and the manager played as basically a manager and a security guard at the same time. And they would always come and get me and be like, or they'd call me over the microphone, the DJ would, hey, James to the front desk or whatever, the front door or whatever, when stuff was going down, or they'd be like, hey, you need to go talk to him. And it's just those type of people just bring, those type of environments just bring out the trash of people, just the drunks, in strip club, you got drug addicts, you got pimps, you got dope dealers in there, so you're going to get into it with these guys, So, let's see, I'm trying to think a good incident I had one time that was pretty funny was, this guy, I've had so many, but this guy one time, I throw him outside. I get him in a headlock. I drag him out. I throw him outside. And once we drug him outside, usually we'd be like, obviously we're not trying to fight people out there, but every now and then stuff happens. But we would pull out we had pepper spray, and we'd tell him, okay, I said, if you don't get off the property, I'm gonna mace you.
Oh wow! So
the dude's like talking. He's talking crap. He looks at me. And goes, why don't we go out? And he's kept running his mouth. And he wouldn't leave. And I told him like 3 times. I said, dude, I'm about to mace you, man. So he looks at me. And goes, well, why don't we go out without the mace? And so I looked over at my boss, who was like, my general manager actually lived with him at the time. So I looked at him. He looked at me. And so my general manager goes, all right, y'all walk around the side of the building where there ain't no cameras. So we walk around the side of the building. And he's a Mexican guy, probably like 25 years old. Probably he was big. He wasn't little. He was probably about 6'1", maybe 210 pounds. He was a decent sized dude. And we squared up, right? And I put my hands up and I flinched at him. When I did, he put his hands up and I leg kicked him really hard. And then put his hands up again. And I flinched. He did it again, kicked him again. Then he tried to tackle me, and I got him in the front guillotine, and I choked him, and he started tapping on my leg. But then I threw him to the ground, and then he got up, and then I kicked him, and then he kicked him one more time in the leg. It was it. He took those leg kicks, and he was like holding onto the wall. He couldn't even walk. He grabbed his leg and was like holding onto the wall to try to walk and stuff. And then the funny part about it was then his uncle was still in there. His uncle was like in the VIP with the girl in the club, right? And his uncle was still in there. His uncle was his ride. And so we felt bad for the guy after this happened. So we told him he wanted to come back in. And so we made him repay cover. And I told him, I said, you can order food or you can get dances, but you're not allowed to drink any alcohol. So he comes in, spends more money getting in and everything. And he stays in there after I already beat the guy. But I didn't hit him one time. I only kicked him. I didn't have to punch him in the face or nothing like that. And then we come back in and we get more money from this guy. And then when he leaves, he tells his uncle that I beat him up for no reason, attacked him for no reason. His uncle looked at me and he's like, this guy does it. He goes, he does this shit everywhere he goes. So.
Wow. For a second, I got scared like the uncle was the head of some kind of mafia. And then
no,
James Vick had to take a trip somewhere where there's like a lake and no one around, and you have to fight off like 12 mafia dudes. But that's impressive. That's impressive.
Dude,
I like
you want to hear
that.
another crazy? Yeah. I have another crazy one about a similar like mafia type story. If you got time.
Of course.
Yeah. Always have time.
So basically, this drunk guy, we call him an Uber to come pick him up, a cab, and he refuses to get in it. I mean, he refuses to get in the cab, right? And he starts like trying to argue with the cab driver, and he's drunk, right? So the manager tells me, one of the managers tells me, you take him home. He said, you take him to a hotel. He said, take him to a hotel up the street and drop him off, right? So I already knew where this was going. I was like, God, I already know this guy's it's gonna go. So I load him. We had a company vehicle, like a big Hummer, and I take him in the Hummer. I load him up, right? And I'm gonna take him off and down a hotel and drop him. And then he's like, I was trying to be nice and ask him, where you live, bro? And he told me that he only lived like 4 miles away. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take the guy home. So we get on the highway, we start driving, and he looks at me and goes, I'm going to punch you in your face. I was like, he was, I'll fuck you up. I was like, dude, calm down, I'm your friend. I was trying to talk to him like you have to do drunk people. So he wouldn't stop. And then he said it again like 3 more times. And I was like, all right. So I pulled over and I was like, dude, get out of the car. And when I did, he tried to attack me inside the car, but I already buckled my seatbelt. So I pulled his hand off. He ripped my shirt. I pulled his hand off, opened the door. I come out. He opens the door. I come out. He comes out swinging. I beat his ass real quick, and I leave him right there on the side of the road. Just leave me. I mean, I didn't knock him out or anything. I never even. I kneed him in the body, and I kicked him in the leg, and I jabbed him one time. Like I didn't hurt the guy like where he couldn't, where he was like out or anything. I just tried to get him away from me so I could take off and get it. So I leave, right? And then I notice his phone's still in the car. So I drive back by and I throw his phone out on the ground, and then I drive off.
That's nice.
Then I get back in my shirt. I get back to the club. My shirt's ripped, right? So I was like, I didn't have any other clothes. So I just went home. It was already like 1 o'clock. The bar closed at 2 a.m. So it was only like an hour left. So I go to leave, right? I leave. And then when I leave, there's like 2 Russian mafia type guys come in.
Whoa.
Looking. They weren't looking for me. They were looking for this guy. They were looking for him. I guess they were maybe supposed to like protect them, or I don't know. It was crazy. They said like they came in and like the bouncers were even scared to like stop them. They came in and walked around and looked at the place.
John Wick.
Said these dudes were like 6'5", like 300-pound Russian with Russian accents. It was crazy.
Whoa.
And then after that, I was thinking these dudes are gonna come back and fuck me up, but they never did.
And that was the first time James Vick met Andrei Arlovsky. No, that was a crazy story, dude. Unbelievable. Well, I can't wait for you to release your autobiography. Just quickly, because we know you're a busy guy. And before we let you go, we have to quickly get your thoughts on Kevin Lee's performance over Edson Barboza this past weekend. Because before this fight was happening, and I mean, Ariel Helwani sort of mentioned it on the MMA Hour, a lot of people believed that you may be fighting possibly the winner of this fight. What did you think of Lee's performance?
I thought he looked really good, actually. I thought Kevin Lee, I was impressed. I was impressed. I wasn't surprised, though, because I was surprised he got Barboza down that easily. But the thing with Barboza is he's probably the most skilled fighter in the whole UFC. But when the going gets tough, he breaks. And all of his fights he's lost, none of them have been because of his skill set. It's been because he's broke in fights, And that's pretty much what happened. Lee got him down and put a beating on him, and Barboza basically broke and didn't even try to win at that point. He looked like he was just trying to survive. And of course, I would love to fight Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's been ducking me for 2 years. He's already turned down 2 fights with me. I have text messages proving that he's turned down fights with me back when Joe Silva was still around, and I'm waiting for when that time comes. I've said this multiple times on multiple radio stations and podcast stuff that Kevin Lee's turned down fights with me, and he's never denied it. He just hasn't said anything about it. if he does, I'm just going to expose his ass, because I've been saving those text messages for 2 years now, where his camp basically said that, you know, when before I lost my only fight to Beneil Dariush, you know, me and Beneil took that fight. I took that fight with him on a month notice. We asked to fight Kevin Lee, and Kevin Lee, camp basically said they didn't want to fight such a tall guy on short notice, so they turned down the fight with me. And then before I fought Soto this last fight, Kevin Lee and Chiesa both turned down the fight with me, is what Sean Shelby told me. So I mean, I would love to fight Kevin Lee, but I knew I wasn't going to get to fight the winner of that fight. I mean, how am I going to get the number 5 rank guy to fight me if I can't even get the number, you know, 9 or 10 rank guy to fight me, you know? So I'm kind of screwed at the moment.
And just quickly, if you and Lee did match up and fight, how do you think that fight would go?
I would whip his ass. I mean, obviously, he could probably get me down a couple times, but my ground game ain't shit. Like, I'm not gonna lay on my back and just take a beating like Barboza did. I'm gonna get the fuck up. Okay, none of these dudes hold me down, or I may catch his neck coming in and then choke him out too. I have 3 submission wins in the UFC as well. But he's not gonna outstrike me. I'm gonna move. I'm not impressed with his striking at all, and I think that basically he's going to blow his wad trying to take me down, so he's going to gas himself out trying to hold me down, and I think that I'll knock him out. You just mentioned that you don't think the UFC are going to put you up against him. We read something about the fact that you're in contract negotiations at the moment, and apparently the UFC have presented you with some sort of opponent. Is that true? Do you have an opponent that is currently on the table for you to fight, and how are these contract negotiations going? Yeah, they offered. Where'd you read that at? Huh?
we have our people. We have a couple of people here and there.
They offered me a fight, but yeah, I'm in contract negotiations.
So is this a person that's recently fought, or is this a person sort of outside the top 5, 6? Is this a big name?
You know who it is. You know who it is.
What does it rhyme with? Give us a hint.
You know who it is.
In terms of these negotiations, we imagine the UFC presents you with an opponent and then also with a contract. Have you signed the contract? Are you guys still trying to figure out what the best deal is?
No, basically, I'm on the contract that I was on. I was on a 4-fight deal, and I have 2 fights left. And the opponent they offered me, I wasn't happy about, and then they didn't want to pay me what another person was getting to fight that guy. So I'm not gonna. I mean, I have a better. So the opponent they offered me basically is not ranked above me, and the other guy that he was scheduled to fight before was getting more money than what I'm getting to fight him. So all I asked was for the same money, and they didn't want to give it to me. So now I'm waiting it out and seeing.
That's interesting. And just explain this relationship with the UFC to us, because, you know, obviously you're on this amazing streak, and a lot of people are like, why isn't James Vick headlining cards? Why isn't Fight Night cards? Why isn't James Vick, you know, getting these big name opponents? Now you mentioned that obviously they're giving you someone who's sort of ranked below you. Why isn't the UFC pulling the trigger and trying to get you a bigger name opponent, especially with this big push from fans, you know, wanting to see you fight bigger names?
And okay, just without saying his name, I know you're thinking of probably the right person. You know how the other day he posted something about a main event.
Okay, so things are getting interesting. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So the other day, the guy you're thinking about, the guy that you think, if we're thinking about the same person, I'm not going to say his name yet, but I was never offered a main event. Kid, let's be clear about that. I've never been offered a main event. I was told that I would be on the main card. That's exactly what I fucking was told. I would be on the main card. That's not a fucking main, and it's not even a fucking pay-per-view. So once again, so this plays right into what you're saying about my relationship with the UFC. I don't understand it. I don't fucking get it. And when I was on the phone the other day negotiating with the Sean Shelby, that was brought up. I said, why the fuck am I 9-1 in the UFC? I've never been on the main card of a pay-per-view. I've never been on a countdown show. I've been flown out to one event. Last year I got flown out to International Fight Week, and that's it. I said, I said, this is fucking ridiculous, man. And his answer is, that's not my department. Well, maybe you should talk to that department. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand it either. I mean, it really is kind of annoying. It kind of almost makes you want to fight. It makes me just want to fight my last 2 fights out and play the field. You know what I'm saying? It's like, do I go where I'm celebrated or where I'm tolerated? You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit's a joke, you know?
So do you think based on these negotiations and how they go, this will kind of influence your decision? If you sort of don't get the contract that you're after, you may go down that path and maybe play the field a bit?
I mean, regardless, I still have 2 fights left in my contract, so I have to fight it out regardless.
Sure.
I mean, dude, I'm like everyone else. Ain't nobody else want I don't want to leave the UFC. I want to be a fucking UFC world champion. The problem with it is this fight gets me no closer to becoming a world champion, you know, in my opinion. So, of course, I want to be a world champion, you know. So it's like I feel like this fight really doesn't get me any closer. So I'm not happy about it, you know. I mean, I'm fucking 31 years old. I'm not 21 anymore. How many of these fucking guys? If I get a top 10 opponent and I lose, that's my fucking fault. I'll go win a few more fights and come back. But right now, I want another chance. There's several of these guys have got multiple chances.
So I guess as we let you go, James, what is sort of the ideal scenario for you? You know, at a time and place, what sort of event are you eyeing? I mean, I imagine there's sort of one sort of already on offer. They've offered you not only an opponent, they've offered you a time and place, right?
Yeah, you know, the time and play, you know, probably July would be good. You know, the problem is I don't know who I'm gonna fight. There's not really anyone ranked above me that's either not injured or booked or would even fight me. The only 2 guys I saw that didn't just come off fights already was Eddie Alvarez and Nate Diaz. And you know, Nate Diaz is not gonna fight anybody but McGregor, and then Eddie Alvarez wouldn't dare fight me. So. Yeah, there's no way, you know. The options aren't great right now at the moment for me.
And just in case Eddie watches this interview and he sees you, what would your message be to Eddie as he's looking for an opponent if the UFC was to grant that fight to come together?
That dude there ain't no way in hell he would fight me. Come on, man.
You just gotta stay ready, James. You never know who's gonna pull out, not make weight. So who knows?
Well, here's the thing though too. Here's the thing with that. Well, if they want that as a possibility, then obviously he's not gonna fight. But they need to put me on the same card as him because I don't understand where these people are. This is something people have to understand when they say, "Oh, you got to be ready." First of all, I'm in shape right now. I could fight right now and be perfectly fine. Now, can I make the weight on a week notice? No, but no one else can in the lightweight division either. Why do you think they called Max Holloway to fight Khabib? Because him or Brian Ortega were the 2 in line. You know why? Because could no other lightweight make the weight on a week notice? None of us can. They act like I'm the biggest guy in the division. No, I'm the tallest guy in the division. Kevin Lee walks around as heavy as I do, or probably heavier. I'm 10 weight cuts deep, and I've never missed weight before. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. Yeah, I'm always in shape, man. I train twice a day, year round. That's how I'm beating all these guys that have been training for 10 years longer than I have. I already practiced once. I'm going to practice again after we get off the phone here. But the thing, and I have nothing scheduled. You know what I'm saying? I practice twice a day, year round. But can't none of us make the weight on a week notice or 2. I could probably make the weight on 3 weeks notice. I can make the weight on 3 weeks notice. But anything beyond that, it's going to be hard, you know. But I'm not the only one. You know what I'm saying? All these guys walk around heavy. Kevin Lee just missed weight. He walks around 195, 200 pounds. So does Chiesa. You know what I'm saying? I'm just the tallest guy, but I'm not the heaviest guy in this division, you know. And it's So, I mean, yeah, I can stay ready, but, I mean, you can't call me on a week notice to try to fight Eddie Alvarez. Put me on the same card as him, and if his opponent gets hurt, I'll gladly step in. Or I would just gladly fight him to begin with, but I know that's never going to happen anytime soon.
Well, James, thank you so much for jumping on the program. We're excited to see what happens. Hopefully they give you, you know, a bigger name opponent, or if not, you know, you can come back on here and we can discuss who they do officially end up giving you once it's made official. Guys, make sure to follow James on Twitter and Instagram at JamesVick MMA. Congratulations again on the newborn, and we're excited to see what happens next. Thanks so much for joining us today, James.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is one of the most respected journalists in MMA. You, of course, all know him from his excellent work on ESPN, as well as the fantastic 5 Rounds podcast, which, if you're not, you have to be listening to. Brett Okamoto, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you today, man?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
We're a little bit disappointed, Brett. We thought there was going to be a bit of day drinking going on. Yet we see no beverage. We see no cool, refreshing beverage. What's going on? Is it out of the shot, just like with ESPN, where things are out of the shot when you go on the live telecast?
Yeah, no, just I do have a drink here, but it's boring. It's water. I made a joke with you guys that you were messing with my day drinking routine, but it's because I knew my audience. You know, you can make a beer drinking joke with you Australians. It always goes.
Of course. Meanwhile, me and Casper have been smashing beers since 6 in the morning, getting ready for this interview. Now we're a little bit tipsy, Brett. This isn't a good dynamic here.
That's when the good conversations come out, man.
Yeah, of course. We had John Morgan in the past before, and he had a beer right around the time of UFC. I think 223 it was, and he joined us. So that was good times. Maybe next time. But obviously, getting to sort of more touching things, Kevin Lee's performance over the weekend, wanted to get your thoughts on that. Obviously, other than that wheel kick he ate, it was a pretty dominant performance for Lee. But, after missing weight and sort of already having lost to Tony Ferguson, where do you think he stands in the division, and what would you like to see as next for Kevin Lee?
Yeah, I think he stands in a great spot. It could always be better, but you could say that of a lot of lightweights right now because of the way that division is looking with, I think it's good for the division that Khabib is now the champion and not Conor. He seems to want to fight a little bit more frequently. I'm sure that money comes into his decision making at times, but he doesn't seem like the guy who's going to run away from the sport and fight Floyd Mayweather anytime soon. I think that there's going to be a little bit more consistency now in the lightweight division just because Nurmagomedov is a champion as opposed to McGregor. However, you still have Conor, potentially getting that first crack at him. You have Tony Ferguson who's injured. How long is he going to be out? Is he going to get a title shot when he comes back? So it's cloudy at the top of that 155-pound division. So keeping all that in mind, I think Kevin Lee is in the best spot that he can be. I don't think he's next for a title shot, but I think he impressed a whole lot of people, myself included, in that win over Edson Barboza. I think he's young. I mean, he's the youngest guy out of that group that I just mentioned, 25 years old. The missing weight is an issue, and he definitely can't afford to miss weight in his next fight. Whatever his next fight is, I'm assuming that if it's not, a co-main event on a pay-per-view or something like that, it's going to be a main event again. It's going to be 5 rounds, and they're going to tell him, hey, man, we can't have you missing weight anymore. So that's going to be something that people are paying close attention to. But I was impressed by Kevin Lee, and I don't think he's going anywhere, man. I think he's right there in the mix at 155 pounds.
So you mentioned it before, obviously, Khabib being champion, but the fact that he's looking to take this break till about November, December, possibly fight in New York or Vegas, how do you think it kind of impacts who he will be fighting next? Do you think it works better towards him possibly fighting Conor McGregor because McGregor will have this court date in June and maybe have everything sorted out by then? Or do you think it still sort of works for guys like maybe a Tony Ferguson or other fighters who might be healed up and ready to go by then?
I may be naive on this one, but I don't think it matters when it comes to Conor. I think Conor is either going to want to take this fight or not. And if Conor wants this fight, then it'll happen. And that's not to say that Khabib, Nurmagomedov doesn't have chips to play here. I mean, he has the title. He has Russia behind him. He has a lot of leverage in any situation he's going to be in. But when it comes down to, is Conor McGregor going to be his next opponent? I think the ball is more so in McGregor's court. It was always going to be that way. Him coming out and saying, I want to wait till November. I want to wait till December. That didn't come as a surprise to me because that's what he was saying at UFC 223. We know that the guy has Ramadan. We know that sort of eliminates him from the summer. From what I heard, the UFC was still kind of talking to him. Hey, can we get you back any sooner than that? But he stuck to his guns. And I don't think, as much as it's a bummer to finally get a new UFC lightweight champion and then have him immediately say, I'm not coming back for, what is that, 7 months, 8 months between April and potentially December. I think it makes sense because Khabib Nurmagomedov's next fight is going to be a very big fight. As I mentioned, with his religion, he can't fight, in July. So to me, I mean, if we see him in November or December, yes, that's a long time to wait, but I think it's appropriate. I think by that time we'll have, a challenger, whether it's Conor or somebody else, and the UFC will have a lot of time to market and promote that fight. And it'll be a real big deal at the end of the year because, as we all know, the UFC stacks their cards at the end of the year.
So essentially, you don't think it's a disadvantage at all that, we've got this new champion, but obviously with Ramadan, we'll never have him at an international fight week. You feel like sort of, the UFC can bypass that, and as long as he has at least two big fights a year, it's sort of still good for the UFC.
I think so. I mean, how often are these champions fighting per year anyway?
Yeah,
I mean, if you go and you look at these champs that they're getting paid more. They don't want to fight 3-4 times a year. They want to fight twice a year. And so with Khabib, what that means is that you just don't book him in the summer. And yeah, that's going to be a little bit of an annoyance for the UFC, I guess, business wise, if they want him to be. I mean, of course, Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov July 7th. If they could have gotten that fight an international fight week, that's huge, right? But I mean, like I said before, there's big cards that the UFC does in November, in December. I mean, they've had big Super Bowl related cards, in February that they tried to blow out before. So Is it ideal to have a UFC lightweight champion and one of your biggest stars unavailable in the summer months? Of course, but you can work your way around it. I think as long as he's still willing to fight 2 times a year at least, then it's no problem.
I like how with UFC 223, the UFC put on a bunch of really good lightweight fights on the same card, and you kind of saw a little bit of a tournament of sorts as to who may be fighting for the title next. And I think at Madison Square Garden or in December, it'd be great if they could put a couple of good lightweight fights underneath that fight so we could see who could possibly fight those winners. The winner from Conor and Khabib, if that happens. But we've got so many great fighters. Kevin Lee, Dustin Poirier's in there. Eddie Alvarez, wants an interim title, wants a big fight next. If you're sort of booking who Dustin Poirier fights next, if you're sort of booking who Kevin Lee fights next, or Eddie Alvarez, are there any sort of matchups in your mind that sort of make sense in the meantime while we wait till November, December?
Yeah, so I think it starts at the top, right, with Conor and Khabib. That's the fight that needs to happen, and hopefully the UFC can make that fight happen. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, I like this Eddie Alvarez-Nate Diaz fight, right? I mean, Nate Diaz has to come back at some point. And
not for an interim belt, though, right? Please tell us not for an interim belt.
No, not for an interim belt, but who knows, man? I mean, what if the UFC wants to start a 165-pound weight class? I have not been told that is imminent. In fact, I know for a fact that there is some resistance to that. But if the UFC were to ever decide to create a 165-pound belt, there's so many options and so many different avenues they could take of who to kickstart that division with. And you've got Nate Diaz, who, let's be frank here, he's been waiting for a Conor fight, and not even from the sense of, oh, I only want to fight Conor. But if he's not going to get the Conor fight, he needed another fight that made sense to him. And up to this point, that really hasn't come to fruition. Well, a fight against Eddie Alvarez, which even though Nate Diaz, I don't think he really wants to fight Eddie Alvarez. I think there's a personal thing there where Nate felt that Eddie kind of ducked him, which is not real. I mean, you can see it completely from Eddie's side of the equation. There was a time a couple years ago when that fight, it looked like they were coming to a head, but then Eddie got a title shot. So of course he's going to veer off and take the title shot. Well, Nate took that personally. He said, hey man, we were supposed to fight. We had beef. And then you took another option. And the way in Nate Diaz's mind works, he's like, well, fine. I'm not going to turn around and throw you a favor then if you want a big fight against me now. But I think if the UFC can make it worth both of their while, that's a fight that has a backstory. It's a fight that I like stylistically. And then it opens the door for Kevin Lee and Dustin Poirier to fight. I mean, they both just fought the last 2 weeks. They're fun fighters. They're talented. They're in the top 5, top 6, top 7, however you have your rankings looking right now. I think it clears off a whole lot if Nate Diaz comes back and fight Eddie Alvarez. I think all the pieces start to fall into place if that fight happens.
So jump in, Cass, but just quickly, Brett, from your perspective, we all remember the rumors, the UFC want to do this GSP Conor McGregor fight for a 165-pound belt. From your perspective, how true were these talks in the back? And where are they now? Is it the fact that GSP isn't showing much interest in this Conor McGregor fight at all, which is why the UFC looked to sort of move on to this Khabib thing?
Well, I think it, even from the outside, you're always kind of wondering, well, what's going on, behind the scenes that I'm unaware of. But I think all of us from the outside, if you follow the sport closely, you can kind of understand how these conversations would go. There are a lot of benefits to potentially opening a 165-pound weight class. It's a weight class that, is right in between 2 really deep divisions, 155 and 170. So you could populate it, really well right off the bat. And you could have big names and you could have another title to promote. At the same time, it tends to water down some things, and then once you open another weight class, then, are you opening the door to, well, now some of the lighter weight classes are saying, well, where's our middleweight class as well? Where else can we add? And it just has a potential snowball effect. So I think that there is legitimate reasons why the UFC would want to do this. And of course, as a business, they're going to discuss those reasons, but there are also legitimate reasons why you wouldn't want to do this. And there's, an established weight class at 170 pounds. The welterweight weight class, we think of it as 170 pounds. Does that move? Does that change? If you're opening a 165-pound weight class, I think those are some hesitations that the UFC has. I think it's inevitable that at some point down the road, this sport is going to have more weight classes, and that includes the UFC. But it just depends on when the UFC is ready to make that jump.
Yeah, and I guess you could already hear people, in between middleweight and light heavyweight calling for a weight class in between. Those are 2 divisions that you would never really want to thin out because they're pretty thin already. Just moving on to something else that happened this past weekend. Of course, one of the biggest stories at the moment is Leslie Smith being essentially not so much release from her contract, but her contract being fulfilled, the UFC in an unprecedented move, paying her win bonus and her show money, even though she didn't fight, something that very rarely happens, and opting not to extend her contract. What do you make of, I guess, the way the UFC handled this? And, you know, I want to confirm this because from everybody looking at this, everybody's saying clearly this must be because of Leslie Smith's, you know, the fact that she's doing Project Spearhead and her involvement in that. Yeah, well, it would be great if the UFC would come out and comment on this. You know, I think when you have someone like Leslie Smith going out and doing interviews, she spoke to me, she spoke to a bunch of other media outlets, obviously. She's all over the place. The UFC just remaining quiet on it. You know, on one hand, you know, Leslie Smith is saying that she's going to take legal action against them. So maybe they don't want to talk about something that's going to, you know, turn into a legal issue for them. But you know, silence sometimes is not the best approach if you're the promotion. And right now there are two very feasible ways of looking at this. And if you argue one way or the other, they're both reasonable to think. You know, Leslie Smith is 35 years old. Yes, she's won 3 of her last 4 fights, but you know, if she's asking for more money and she's asking for a contract that's bigger than the one she has now, it would not be unreasonable for the UFC to say, you know what, why don't you go out, you know, test free agency. We're not ready to really pay you more than what you're making right now. We just don't feel it. And from the business sense, it makes sense for us. There's the other way of looking at it is that she is, you know, driving something in Project Spearhead that is not to their going to be beneficial to them. It may be negative for them. And you know, by booking her to these events and having her as a UFC fighter, that helps her cause, you know, and it makes her job easier in trying to collect these authorization cards and sign up fighters for this Project Spearhead. So it could be one, it could be the other. I don't really know which one it is because you can make a reasonable argument for either one. I'm interested to see what the UFC comes out and finally says about this. We're 5 days later and they haven't said anything. Do you think they will? Do you think they will release some kind of statement? You know, I think we got to see what happens, what Leslie Smith's next move is. You know, what she's talking about is saying, well, I'm going to file a complaint under, you know, labor relations acts here in the U.S. And one byproduct of that could be that a national labor relations board has to say whether or not Leslie Smith is an employee or an independent contractor. And that could be a really big piece of news. That could be huge. That could change the industry. So we're talking, you know, I see a lot of fan reaction out there saying, like, I don't care about this. You know, Leslie Smith, she got her money, she got paid her show and win, and now she's going to go off and maybe fight for Bellator. Why should I care about this? Well, I can tell you that a lot of people who are involved in the industry and who follow this industry closely are watching this case very closely, because if Leslie Smith brings that forward in a legal way and a national relations board, labor relations board, you know, says that she's an employee, well, then that changes things in a way that they've never been before in this sport.
And I mean, on the flip side, the convicted and disgraced former NFL player Greg Hardy is sort of set to make his pro debut on Dana White's Contender Series. And we all remember years ago, Dana White said that one thing you don't come back from is putting your hands on a woman. So do you think this kind of comes at a bad time with, you know, the UFC kind of getting rid of Smith and not wanting to be in business with her, but then wanting to be in business with Hardy could kind of be spun in a bad way for the UFC at this time?
Yeah, see, I don't really relate it to the Leslie Smith situation. I think it's so different. It's comparing apples to oranges. I can understand why people would say, you know, well, look at what a hypocrisy this is. But again, the situations are so different. I'm not making a connection between the two in my head. I mean, I look at the Greg Hardy incident completely on its own, and it's what you said. The problem is you can come out and say, like, everybody deserves a second chance. You know, no one should completely give up the ability to make a living in this world. You know, he was exiled from the NFL, so does that mean he can't also be a professional fighter? I mean, those are fair questions to bring up. But Dana White has taken a pretty clear stance on this in the past, and that's where the problem is. If you take a clear stance on something, and then you turn around and do the exact opposite, depending on the individual you're dealing with, that's not a great look for the promotion. And unfortunately, for a fight promotion that relies on views and selling pay-per-views, it seems like it's happening here, and I would imagine it would continue to happen in the future. That's just the way the business works.
On a separate note, the TV deal recently got sort of, you know, there were rumors about it, and you might be a perfect guy to ask. I'm not saying you necessarily have inside information, or if you did, that you'd be able to share it here, but the rumors were that Fox Sports and ESPN might be putting together a combined bid for the UFC's TV rights. What did you make of the news? And I know a lot of people are sort of saying, before we judge it, before we make an opinion, we're going to wait for more details to sort of come forth. What are the details that you're most interested in? And as it stands for the rumors, what did you make of them?
Yeah, as far as confirming any rumors, I'm gonna be kind of boring. I don't have anything I can give you, and that is it's only from the sense of, as a journalist, I'm only going to report something if I know it's completely accurate and it's not even a done deal, but it's worth reporting. It's to a point where it can be reported,
Sure.
And TV deals are a tricky thing, man. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation floating around. You hear a lot of different things about what's going on with a TV deal, and for different reasons. I mean, obviously there's hundreds of millions of dollars being negotiated in these potential deals. So you have to be just weary of anything that you hear. As far as the details that I'm most interested in, I mean, I've said all along, for the last year leading up to Fox's exclusive deal expiring, the UFC just needs to be in business with the right partners that also promote it, not necessarily in a way that, they lose their journalistic integrity or, they just become just a partner to the UFC and not a critical eye at times. But they need someone who's invested, and they need someone who creates content around it and who gets the stories out and I guess just covers it in a much more broad way than it has mainstream wise. Fox did that in the beginning. You can argue that maybe or not they were what kind of job they were doing it towards the end of that deal. But the media world is changing, that the consumption of media is changing, and I think that any deal that the UFC enters and any partners that they find through a broadcasting way, it has to be intelligent guys intelligent networks that have plans to produce content that really draw people into something beyond just the stars, because the pay-per-view model is just not sustainable. We've been seeing those numbers, and it's hard to sell pay-per-views in this climate. So you have to drive content in a different way.
You mentioned sort of if the UFC were to sign with someone, it's going to be someone who's going to promote them well and I guess, value them and invest. If it was hypothetically, and again, maybe something, well, I'm sure many things that we don't, but maybe that this, these rumors are not really true. But if it was as it stands, that the UFC would have events on ESPN Plus, which is a digital streaming service. First of all, a lot of people were sort of frustrated because they thought, wow, we need to pay another $5 for, another streaming service. But it just seems like that streaming service isn't the one that caters to sort of the hardcore ESPN fans, or it's not the premium content, and it almost feels like the UFC would be pushed aside to something I don't know something on the side. Do you think that would be, I guess, the right move if it was sort of moved to a digital digital streaming provider, at least for some of the fights?
I'm not a TV expert, so I guess take this with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion, but it seems like everything is trending towards the direct-to-consumer model, So I think we shouldn't be surprised if the next deal that the UFC signs is heavily reliant on that model, where a sort of that Netflix model, that Fight Pass model, what WWE did with their network. I mean, building it around that type of model should not come as a shock to us. Amazon has been rumored to be in the negotiations with the UFC for Amazon Prime. That's just the way that media consumption is trending now. And speaking to the UFC specifically, ESPN Plus is a huge platform for them that they're going to put a lot into. Just like it was 7 years ago when the UFC signed with Fox, though, I think it's big wherever they go, what type of exposure they're going to get, and that's what takes me back to building the shoulder programming around it and the content about it. And if it were to land at ESPN, showing up more on SportsCenter, it has shown up there in the past, but showing up more frequently, and having studio shows around it, whether it's at ESPN, Fox, NBC, anywhere it goes. I think we should expect some type of the direct to consumer model, and what the UFC should want is a high exposure level, because again, you can't just rely on a handful of stars to carry your pay-per-view each year. I mean, we've seen in 2016 when Conor and Ronda fight 4 times collectively, 5 times, then you can. But when they don't, you need to be able to push other guys, and that's where that exposure content comes from.
It's a fascinating situation, especially with the WWE having such success with their digital subscription service. Interesting to see where this takes us, Brad. But before we let you go, we want to quickly get your thoughts on the Frank Mir and Fedor Emelianenko fight. They're set to fight this weekend at Bellator 198. What is the general, I suppose, interest in this fight? If you could gauge it, what kind of excitement are you sort of feeling from fans? Because, I mean, we're over here in Australia, but we're still on the internet. We're sort of seeing what people are talking about. And it doesn't look like, this is the same excitement that would have been for this fight if, it happened a number of years ago. What do you kind of gauge it at the moment?
Yeah, I feel that as well. Although just anecdotally, I was at a softball game last night, and I had some guy come up to me. He's like, "Oh man, Fedor and Mir this weekend," and I kind of double-taked a little bit, and I was like, "You've never really talked to me about fights before, but this is the one, huh? This is the one that gets you going." And he's like, "Yeah, man, Fedor, fighting for the pride of Russia, and I remember Frank and the. I mean, anytime those guys fight, I got to watch." And it's like, so just word of mouth. Is important, I think, in this sport, and you got two names that immediately people recognize and they have memories of these two guys. So I agree with you guys. I just haven't felt a huge buzz, that big fight feel that you get occasionally throughout the year. I haven't felt that for this card, but I do think it's going to draw in viewers. I do think it's going to be a lift for Bellator. They need it to be a lift, and they've done some promotional material on it. You've seen some of the videos that they put out. They've invested some money in going over and taking videos of Fedor running through the trees in Russia. So I think that's a good thing for Bellator. For me personally, I think that this is one of those fights where, of course, these guys aren't in their prime, but it has some cool storylines around it. I really do think that. Frank Mir leaving the UFC, coming off of a 2-year suspension. I don't think this is how he necessarily envisioned the end of his career. But it opens up some interesting windows for him. Now he gets to fight Fedor Emelianenko, which wasn't going to happen in the UFC. And he gets an opportunity to say he was a champion in 2 different promotions if he's able to get through this Bellator tournament. I think, part of Frank, it rubs him a little bit the wrong way that everybody talks about Fedor the GOAT, and he's not in those conversations. He's remembered as a great heavyweight champion for the UFC, but we don't talk about him as the greatest of all time like we do Fedor Emelianenko. So I think there's definitely some great storylines surrounding this fight. Is it what it would have been, 8 years ago? No, it's not. But I'm intrigued by the fight. I'm excited to see it on Saturday.
Yeah. Who do you think wins? Who do you think gets the victory this weekend?
Fedor has not had an easy go when he comes over and fights in the U.S.
No.
And when he comes over to the U.S. and he fights in a cage, Fedor has had some rough nights. I'm picking Frank. I think Frank is it's a heavyweight fight, right? Frank could go out in one shot, but I got to pick Frank.
Yeah, and Frank looks like he's in good shape as well going into this fight, so it's going to be interesting. We got a fan question here, Brett, that we thought we might throw your way as well. Kobe's Corner on Twitter is asking, in regards to the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix, what we think about the timing and the pacing of the whole tournament. Do you think the fights have been spread out a little bit too far apart? And what do you think about a guy like Chael Sonnen fighting in January and getting extra time to train or recover, while the winner of Fedor and Mir will have significantly less time? And just from my perspective, I love the Grand Prix where the fights happen very close together in one night or over a couple of nights back to back. I'm not a big fan of things being spread so far apart, because not only is it a little bit less interesting from a viewer's perspective, but it's also, I think people forget about it, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about Chael Sonnen fighting at the start of the year, and the fact that this is a Grand Prix. I think a lot of people are just seeing this as more of a fight between Fedor and Frank Mir. So what's your perspective on it? Do you think it's been spread out a little bit too far?
Yeah, I would agree that people kind of forget, but that's the beauty of a tournament and a bracket, is that you can remind them instantly. All you have to do is put up a photo of the bracket, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, now I remember everything that's going on. So I don't think that's a huge detriment to them that it's taking up the course of the year. In fact, if anything, one thing that I've thought about Bellator in the past is that there's not much continuity between their events. Part of the problem with that is that I don't believe Bellator does a great job of promoting its champions. It does a great job of promoting individual single fights, which is great when you have those fights and you have those matchups. But when you need to get people invested in a Friday night fight, in Thackerville, Oklahoma, people want to know, well, like, where does this? That's where the belt organically does that. You have a champion at the top of the division, and the two guys who are fighting, how close are they to that champion, and when are they going to fight that champion? Those are the questions that sort of drive this sport. And if you haven't really promoted your champions, and not even everybody can say who your 185-pound champion is, your 170-pound champion is, it just makes it difficult to have continuity, I feel like, from event to event. So I think that the tournament has helped them with that. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be some hit and misses. The Mitrione fight versus Roy Nelson didn't do, obviously, the ratings that Chael and Rampage did. But you've got the strong side of the bracket now again. You've got Fedor fighting Frank, and then right after that, they're going to be facing the winner of Chael, who we know is a draw for Bellator. So so far I look at the tournament as a pretty good success. I mean, all the fights have happened so far. I know that's only 2 of them, but this one looks like it's going to happen, barring any something crazy happening this week. And the winners of the 2 fights are healthy and presumably moving forward. So that's a big win for Bellator right there. Is that the tournament has stayed together thus far.
Sure. Brett, really appreciate your time. We'll let you go on this. Last fan question. We're going to have fun with these fan questions just in a moment when we let you go. Gorgeous George, actually, from MMA Junkie Radio, wants to know if DC beats Stipe Miocic in July, is he the GOAT? Not the heavyweight GOAT, but just the GOAT in general. What do you think?
Yeah, he's in the conversation, but I mean, the simple answer is no. I don't think you can call him the single greatest fighter of all time.
Do you reckon it's the John Jones losses that hurt him? Because that's what a lot of people sort of pointing to. That's what I'm pointing to as well.
I mean, it has to be, right? If he had beaten John, who was looked at as arguably the most talented guy the sport has ever seen, then yeah, I mean, then he has a far more, a much stronger case for it. But I mean, I still think George St. Pierre. I mean, even if Daniel's able to move up and beat Stipe Miocic, which is an insane task, an insane feat. And I mean, we're literally splitting hairs here. Daniel Cormier, if you want to call him the greatest fighter of all time, I'm not going to sit there and argue with you over it for an hour. But I don't know if you can move him ahead of a guy like George St. Pierre, and I know that this will get people upset, but maybe even Demetrius Johnson. I'm not positive on that. I'm not positive on that. So it's a good question, and you can have a debate about it. But for me, no, it won't make him the greatest of all time.
Well, there you guys go. Guys, make sure to follow Brett on Twitter at @Okamoto ESPN. And, of course, the 5 Rounds podcast. Check it out. It's a fantastic listen. Great for anything that you do throughout the day. Brett, thank you so much for joining us. We're a little bit disappointed that there was no drinking, but I think we can look forward to it possibly next time. We might make the topics a little bit more difficult for you so that you really want to drink throughout the interview, and then you have no choice but to drink and sort of deal with those topics with a bit of alcohol. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I wanted to ease into it, maybe not make my first appearance with the alcoholic beverage, but next time, yeah, we'll think about it.
That's right. Shots all around next time Brett Okamoto comes back on Submission Radio. And guys, we're nearing the end of the show, but like Casper mentioned, we have a few fun fan questions. We thought we'd go on Twitter yesterday. What happened was we thought we'd go on Twitter. We thought we'd pose a question to everybody. If anyone has questions, it could be MMA related or life related, whatever it is, we asked them to drop it in a tweet below for this episode. There's a little gif of Vince Vaughn from, I believe, it kind of looks like Wedding Crashers, and it goes, people helping people. So this is all that is. It's not exactly expert advice, but Brett mentioned, we just spoke to Brett about this whole GOAT thing, and the question was from Gorgeous George. Of course, they do an amazing job over there at MMA Junkie Radio, so it's great to be answering this question for him, and a big shout out to him. As we finish up this question cast, just my thoughts on it. I think Brett had a really good point. I think it's one of those situations right now where, to me, if Stipe beats DC, I think it's a great feather in his cap, and I think he's on his way to possibly becoming the GOAT down the track. But it doesn't quite seal it for me just yet. I think a couple more title defenses, a couple more fights over some other tough fighters out there, and he could be in the discussion. But I also have to say that I don't like the discussion of the whole GOAT thing in general, because there's just so many cases to be made, and it's just based on time. I mean, at one point, Fedor looked like he was the GOAT. At one point, Anderson Silva looked like he's the GOAT. And even though John Jones is suspended and he's going through everything that he's going through, and I mean, Demetrius Johnson and GSP for me are definitely in the conversation as well. It's just hard for me not to go past John Jones still being the GOAT, in the sense that he's destroyed all of his opponents. He's had some of the toughest fights out of all the sort of contenders in the GOAT discussion as we speak. And even though he's under this cloud and we don't know when he's going to come back, no one's really sort of dethroned him for me just yet. I don't know. Do you have sort of a GOAT that stands out? I was going to say,
having said all that, what do you think about DC? Because I know George's question was originally what this means for DC. If DC can beat Stipe, does that make DC the GOAT? Or are your thoughts the same regarding the GOAT situation?
Well, I mean, and I think Brett, and we covered it well just before. Those John Jones losses, they still ring true if he beats Stipe. And I think it's just, if DC beats Stipe in a funny way, it kind of makes John Jones look even better, because we know that John Jones, wanted to possibly fight Stipe or do a heavyweight fight, and there was that Brock Lesnar discussion. But for John Jones, he can make the case of, hey, I beat DC twice, DC beats Stipe. maybe I'm standing higher in this GOAT discussion than Stipe because, DC beat him. If he beats him, in a dominant way. So I think if DC beats Stipe and if John Jones comes back and DC beats John Jones, I think he's definitely in the discussion. But until this John Jones fight is figured out, I just don't know if he's the greatest of all time. But in saying that, DC should have a category of his own because this is a guy that goes out and takes on guys. He doesn't care how hard the fight is. He's always game to take the hardest fight. So even though he may not be technically, looked at as the greatest of all time, he has aspects a lot of other fighters don't have, like the willingness to fight the toughest competitors, the willingness to get back in there and fight after tough losses, the willingness to go into two weight classes because of his relationship with Cain Velasquez and dominating 205 when who knows what could have been happening at heavyweight. So he's definitely in there as a very memorable fighter with an impressive career, but I'm just not sure about the GOAT thing. Yeah.
I think it's all. Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think it's really hard to call somebody the GOAT when they had a loss so recently. I mean, that was just last July, and it was a devastating loss, and it was a loss to a guy that he'd already lost to previously. If he had beaten John Jones, I think the discussion would be quite different. Like you mentioned, I think DC is in the discussion. Like you certainly can't shit on him. You can't say he hasn't accomplished a lot. If he goes out there and wins the heavyweight belt, that's crazy. But I think this whole this whole GOAT question for DC, a lot of the discussion when it comes to the GOAT is hypotheticals. Like you kind of look at it, and a lot of it is MMA maths, and think, all right, well, if DC beats Stipe, then technically DC would beat everybody that Stipe's beaten, right? And you look at the guy that Stipe's beaten, guys like Arlovsky, guys like Overeem, guys like JDS, guys like Mark Hunt, and I don't think you can really say that. I think that if DC was competing at heavyweight, he probably could beat most of those guys. I mean, I could, see him beating Arlovsky for sure. I could see him beating Junior Dos Santos. I think Overeem would be a fascinating matchup just because, Daniel Cormier historically has been susceptible to body shots. Overeem has horrendously damaging knees. He's got very good kicks to the body. He's got a good clinch game in on himself. So I think that would have been a fascinating fight a while ago. And if you look at DC's best wins at heavyweight, I know that he's undefeated at heavyweight, but really his best wins, I think, off the top of my head, would have been Bigfoot Silva in 2011 and Josh Barnett, I want to say 2013. So obviously Bigfoot and Josh Barnett were a lot better versions of themselves years ago. But I mean, I don't know. If he is to beat Stipe, that's a massive, massive feather in his cap, but I wouldn't really sit there and say, well, that automatically means that he can beat all the guys that Stipe's beaten. I think it's one thing to go in, win a belt, and be the champion, in one fight. I think it's another thing to sort of go through the gauntlet and just keep defending that belt. It makes things so much more difficult. I mean, Conor McGregor, perfect example. Went up to lightweight, won the belt, not taking anything away from him, but could he have beaten all the other guys? Could he have beaten, Tony and Khabib and Lee and, Gaethje and Poirier and all those guys? I mean, it just takes a mental toll. And I think, when it comes to DC, considering that he lost to John Jones so recently, I would be leaning much, much closer to John Jones as being the GOAT. And I think it's just a huge shame because this discussion would be a lot more, potent if it was John Jones moving up to heavyweight. And I think a lot more people would be more accepting of the fact that, if John Jones is to beat Stipe, he's probably going to be the GOAT because, it's not like he lost to Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting discussion. And like we said, and like I said, there's definitely something to award DC for the fact that he takes the hardest fights. He doesn't avoid opponents. He gets in there with the toughest opponents. And we know some of the guys that we mentioned, guys, for example, like GSP, who had, an amazing run in welterweight at one point was fighting anybody. There are some fights there where, it looked like he was a little bit hesitant to take. The Michael Bisping fight as well, that was impressive because he went up to middleweight and took that. So it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough to do it. But all these guys in the discussion, very impressive. But John Jones is just hard to argue with what he's done in the sport. Let's move to this question by Jordan Patu, who, by the way, we grabbed dinner with in Perth, I believe. How about that, Casper? Very nice guy. We met him. A friend of a friend of ours called Brendan, who does a fantastic job as well, a journalist down here. Had a great dinner with him, a fantastic dude. I think a Kiwi originally and moved to Melbourne. And he has a question for us. Who let the dogs out? Of course. And his Twitter is...
yes, the age-old question.
Who let the dogs out? I think the person that... Okay, so there's two trains of thoughts about this, and I'll get your thoughts in a sec, Cass. But for me, I feel like the person who lets the dogs out is like a sneaky thief who wants to distract everybody, sort of one of those 1-2s. Look over here while the dogs have run out. and I'm going to do something like I'm going to rob your house. I'm going to steal your girlfriend. I'm going to steal your job. I'm going to steal your car. These are the kinds of people who let the dogs out. The people that like the dogs, I think they keep the dogs in or let the dogs out, but on a leash in a more controlled environment. I don't think any sane person would just let the dogs out. What about you, Cass?
I don't know, man. Brad Pitt from Snatch. That's why he's asking about dogs. I have no idea.
Brad Pitt from Snatch. I mean, it could be true. Brad Pitt from Snatch, he lets the dogs out. He gets paid for the dogs.
He's a pikey, so, they're not to be trusted. I could see him letting dogs out.
Okay, I like that. And maybe there's a gem in one of the dog's stomachs. Who knows? Good question there from Jordan. Now let's jump to Amanda Jacobs, who is at Coastal MMA. Her question is, what's Netflix and chill? And I guess the thing with Netflix, and I feel like Netflix has gotten a bad name because all these perverts out there are using it as a way to get people into their house and have sexual relations with them. And now there's a conversation there, like. You go, okay, let's have Netflix and chill. What if people actually want to watch something on their TV? What if they don't want to hook up? Does it give people the wrong idea when you ask someone to come over and do some Netflix and chill? And also, in an all-male situation, like I know sometimes we'll joke around and be like, let's Netflix and chill all together on a Saturday night. Does that mean we have to get sexual? Do you know what I mean? Are we setting the precedent here? I think for Amanda Jacobs...
There's a lot of pressure when we're hanging out, we're watching movies, you, me, Dennis, and the other guys. There's that constant pressure, like, are we not doing enough?
If you put a label on it, do you have to live up to it? My answer to Amanda would be, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this. My answer to Amanda would be this. At one point, Netflix and chill was like cool because people didn't really know it that well. Yeah. And it was kind of like, okay, well, Netflix and chill, but it had like a secret meaning behind it. And it people kind of knew about it, but they didn't, and it made it kind of cool. Now Netflix and chill is something that, some kind of pervert would write to someone on Tinder hoping that things would happen from that night. It kind of lost a little bit of the excitement around it. So I will say that Netflix and chill is now just a sad attempt to get into a person's pants that doesn't want to be with you. So that's my explanation there. It's lost its meaning to me. Casper?
It's been played out a bit, but I like the theory of Netflix and chill. Netflix and chill is basically the new version of like, hey, do you want to watch some movies at my house? Which basically means you're going to come over and then we're going to pick a movie and then we're basically going to have sex while the movie plays out in the background. Which I think is probably one of the greatest lines ever because you're not, you're ditching dinner, you're ditching all the fuss, you're already either on a couch or a bed. So it's like the stage is set, basically. You're ready to go. And, it comes off very innocent, no one can really accuse you of like, hey, you're trying to pull something. Hey, I'm just trying to watch movies here. All right. I want to watch The Little Rascals. I just want to watch The Little Mermaid. All right. I don't know what you're getting from this, but I'm just here for the movies. And then, if something happens, it happens. But obviously with Netflix and, streaming's availability just made things so much easier. But then, like you mentioned, everybody caught onto it. Netflix and chill became a big thing. So now when you say to someone, let's Netflix and chill, you might as well say, hey, do you want to fuck? And it just seems so much more forward. So I don't know. I don't know what the new updated version might be. Maybe if it's like someone who's not really an MMA fan, you can be like, hey, do you want to watch Fight Pass and chill? Or do you want to watch like FS2 prelims and chill? Because I feel like if they're not into MMA, then they're probably going to want to do anything other than that.
That's a great point. You put the MMA on, they don't want to watch the TV. It leads maybe closer to the goal that you were going for. But I mean, probably better off just going Netflix and sex or sex flicks and chill. Kind of mix it up a little bit. I like the
and then you're different because you come off honest and people appreciate that.
Somebody says WWE Network and chill. Maybe you don't go to their house at all because they watch the WWE Network. I know it's a tough shot because me and our videographer Christian and Casper will watch a bit of WWE Network, watch some of the hilarious old school moments from the past. But even me, if I was a single man and I've been in a relationship for 6 years, so I'm like a caveman now when it comes to this kind of stuff. If a woman said to me, do you want to WWE Network and chill, it sends the wrong message. I don't know what's going to be happening. It's a bad move. So if I was to test it on myself, probably don't use that one. But Netflix and sex, maybe get straight to the point. Who knows?
Sure.
All right. Jake Murray, and that's at Jake Murray 88 on Twitter. He has a question here, and Casper, I want to go to you on this one. Are oranges called oranges because of their color?
No, the color is called orange because of the fruit. I was actually fascinated by this.
It's a good question.
It is a good question. So here's the facts. All right, the earliest records of people using the word orange to describe the fruit are in the 1300s. All right, in English.
Wow.
The earliest records of people using orange to describe the color, 1500s. So a couple of hundred years later, which is so. Apparently, before that, people would just refer to orange as just yellow red. Right? 2 words, makes things very long. And it's just amazing that, in the span of, say, 30 years, we've gone so far with technology, so far with, phones and internet and all that kind of stuff. Yet it took people 200 years to figure out, hey, instead of calling yellow red, we'll just call it orange. So there you go. Orange is named, after the fruit.
There you go, Jake Murray. I hope that sort of clears things up for you. I know there'll be a few discussions when you have to break this to your friends later on. Play them this part of the episode. Don't even have to do it yourself. Casper did an amazing job. Final question here from Lucas Grandsire. Grandsire at Grandsire MMA. Can I get an American translation for the expression "too easy"? And I guess this is something you and me, Cass, we use that quite a bit. It's kind of a situation where someone goes, "Oh, hey, can you do this for me?" And you go, "Oh, too easy." And I guess the thing with "too easy" is, I like to use it when it's a situation. I know a person's asking something from me, and I want them to feel good about the fact that, hey, like, this is fine. Like, I'm happy to do this for you. There's no problems to do this. It's too easy. It's no problem at all. Don't worry about it. I like to sort of take the pressure off the person when they ask it. Can you put this fax through? Too easy. Can you get me some lunch? Too easy. It kind of, I guess it takes away some of that negative stigma of someone asking you something and you maybe being a little bit like, fuck this guy. I don't want to get this shit for him. You're kind of like, too easy, man. It's all good. No worries. So the translation, I guess, if we were to translate it to American, it'd be like, you just take the 2 out and just go easy. It'd be something like, no problems. Something like that. It's just a way to relax someone. I mean, we like to say no worries a lot. And I know a lot of people, I don't know how many people are using the old no worries over there in America as well. But, we got guests and stuff like that. And we'll regularly just write no worries. Like, they'll be like, we're 5 minutes late. No worries. Take your time, blah, blah, blah. That's a common expression here in Australia as well. No worries. So I guess it's a little bit like a too easy, where you want to just make the person feel chilled about the fact that they're asking something or something's changed, and you're cool about it. It's the easiest kind of way to do it. Casper, anything to add to this translation?
Not really, but if you want to make something sound more Australian, just add cunt to the end and it'll automatically sound more Australian.
Too easy, cunt.
And too easy. See, that's something that is said very frequently. That's like Australian vernacular right there. Oh, too easy, cunt. That's that's what you hear at barbecues all the time. But it's just funny sometimes. Like I think most people in the States are familiar with too easy, but sometimes it amazes me, like some of the phrases that we use here, almost taking them for granted that people don't use in other parts of the world. I remember this years and years and years ago, Dennis. We were like 12 years old, and we met some of the
going back all that time. All right, let's set the scene back. So there's a shop here in Melbourne. Me and Casper, we love to play basketball. We had fun playing basketball. I love
how you know exactly the story, and I've given you absolutely nothing. All I said was we were 12 years old.
I'll be honest, this still burns in my heart. I want you to tell the story because you're much better a storyteller than me, and you're better with the facts. I have a terrible memory, but just quickly, I'm just going to set the scene for you.
Sure.
Huge fans of basketball. If everybody remembers the N1 mixtape tour, this was the hottest thing out there. It was, speaking of Brett Okamoto, it was on ESPN. They had this whole reality show where they'd go around the country of America and get the best bowlers, and they would play the mixtape tour team. And at the end of the season, one of those people would be on the team. Anyway, super excited. They came down to Australia, say, what? It was like crazy. There's a basketball shop in Melbourne. It was called Kicks 101. Big shop. We'd go there and just look at shoes. Could never afford anything. It was
we
overpriced.
Just sit there sometimes watching video clips on like BT and like stuff like that. We had no lives.
100%. And I know a lot of people who are local here from Melbourne, they'll know about it. By the way, Kicks 101's still around. They moved to a different place in the city, but that's neither here nor there. But you go down these stairs. It was like going into a magical wonderland. And keep in mind also, this was around the time we're in Australia, and it's still kind of similar now, but you had a lot less access to like jerseys, shoes, memorabilia. Me and Casper were big on like wearing sweatbands. Like we'd wear sweatbands to high school and stuff like that. And I didn't wash mine very often. So, and it would be like, oh, you got the long sweatband. I got the, so it'd be a whole sweatband situation. Anyway, they came down, they went to Kicks 101. Earlier, we got some T-shirts. We went to this thing at the Aquatic Center where they gave out some free T-shirts. I had a T-shirt. I wanted it to get signed. Casper, take it from there. We go downstairs. We see the crew.
Wow. Yeah, you see the whole And One crew. Mind you, you were a much bigger fan, of these guys than I was. I was just kind of down for the ride. And then do you remember who you approached? Was it the professor? Was it someone else?
I think it could have been like the pharmacist. I think it might have been like the pharmacist.
Let's say it was
the professor
pharmacist.
was always cool, because I remember when I was really, really young, I was walking through a shopping center here, and the professor walked past me just randomly, and I completely freaked out in the middle of the shopping center, and he was so nice to me, really, really accommodating. And since then, I asked him when they came back to do the tour, "Oh, do you remember me from the shopping center?" And he politely said yes, when I knew there is no way he remembered me. Anyway, back to the story.
I just remember you came up and you were sort of trying to start a conversation. Yeah. You said something like, hey, welcome to Australia, man. How you going? Just starting a chat. And the guy got pissed off because he didn't understand. He's all like, I'm going? I ain't going nowhere, man. I ain't going. And the awkwardness ensued. And then, and then I looked at you looked at me, and then Hello Darkness, my old friend, played, and you
That was Hello Darkness. And there was a bit of argy-bargy. How about that for like an Australian thing? A bit of argy-bargy because... He, exactly like you said, he's like, I'm not going nowhere.
He thought you were telling him to leave, basically.
Yeah, and then we got into this thing. He's like, you mean how you doing?
Yeah,
yeah. Well, no, like, yeah, but I'm also like, how you going? Like, how you feeling? He's like, no, that's how you doing. So we almost got like in an argument. Mind you, this is a grown dude. All right, let's play it like this. This is a grown dude. He's on tour in Australia, a different country, and he's in a basketball shop. And a kid comes up to him, is trying to be nice, and this guy is pulling out the dictionary on me, trying to tell me that I speak English wrong. Ever since then, my heart was broken, and that's obviously why I never became a professional basketball player. I had a lot of skills, but you guys will never find out. Pharmacist, wherever you are right now, it's how you doing, you son of a bitch.
It's how you going. Don't.
I won't fold. All right, it's how you going. How you going. And I haven't heard of the pharmacist since. He must have been going well. Anyway, to finish out the show, guys, a big thank you. Except the pharmacist is going to listen to this and come back to Australia and beat me up. He must be like 40 or 50 now. I got another story about this other guy called Bad Santa, but I'll tell it another time. He played on the mixtape too. A funny story too. Guys, big thank you to our guests this week. Of course, very lucky to have Brett Okamoto, James Vick, Iaquinta, and also very, very lucky to have Dan Hooker come on here. I feel like it's special, Casper. It's Anzac Day here in Australia, and there's an Anzac spirit here on the show. Again, of course, Dan Hooker, thank you for coming onto the program. And I suppose the show is dedicated to all the men and women out there who serve in the military. We hope you guys have a fantastic Anzac Day. You could pick up the bands. I guess it's a little bit late now, but maybe next year, if you guys are local, you could pick up one of these sweet bands. I wore it around, actually, Casper, all the way leading up to Anzac Day. I bought it. I thought I'd wear it around.
Did you wash it? Was it like nonstop? You didn't take it off?
It's like a rubber bracelet. And what I don't understand about didn't realize about these rubber bracelets is they actually destroy your skin on your hand. Like it starts getting a bit rashy and scratchy. Much like the Anzacs,
the hand's got to go now.
Yeah, well, I lose a hand. I can no longer be a hand model, but I persevered. I pulled through, and here you guys go. The last day I'm wearing this until next year. Going to get some new ones. But yeah, guys, support the Anzacs. Great day here in Australia, and a fantastic time to bring you guys another episode. Casper, any final words for the people as we wrap up?
Lest we forget. There you go. No other words needed. Lest we forget.
Netflix and sex. We'll catch you guys next week. Oh, quickly. As we wrap up, jump on Twitter next week. We'll put up a tweet next week before the episode. We'll ask some more questions. We'll do it next week. We might not do it every week, but we'll do it from time to time. And next week will be your chance to ask some more questions. So that's at Submission AUS. And if you guys have some questions before we put out the tweet, just DM us or whatever. Send us a message on Facebook, and we'll just sort of database it till next week. Anyway, guys, have a great week. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great Anzac Day here in America and a great time overseas. We'll catch you guys next week.